Hey guys, tonight we're not setting sail into the roughest waters history has to offer. No greasy pirates, no splintery ships held together by optimism, and no parrots screaming secrets they absolutely overheard. Tonight, we're reclining somewhere far more refined and far more dangerous in its own way, an ancient Greek symposium. But before we pour the wine, argue about philosophy, and definitely make at least one bad decision, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy these slow, mildly chaotic trips into the past. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Somehow, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere, which feels like the exact right time to talk about ancient people drinking too much and debating the meaning of life. Now dim those lights, turn on a fan for that soft white noise hum. Get comfortable, settle into your blankets, and maybe tuck your feet in, not because imaginary rats are involved tonight, but because ancient Greek floors were cold and dignity was optional. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what really happened at a Greek symposium? Not the romanticized version with marble columns and tasteful conversation. The real one, where wine was watered down but still consumed aggressively, where guests reclined for hours on couches, argued about love, politics, and virtue, and occasionally vomited with surprising confidence, where poets recited, philosophers lectured, musicians played, and everyone was expected to keep up intellectually and alcoholically. Tonight, we're stepping into a long night of drinking games, philosophical arguments that go nowhere, and social rules that would absolutely break you. We'll explore why attendance wasn't optional if you wanted status, why sobriety was suspicious, and why one wrong opinion could turn a pleasant evening into a very loud debate about the nature of truth. There will be elegance, there will be excess, and yes, there will be moments so awkward and ridiculous that you'll be grateful you're listening from a warm bed instead of a stone couch with a headache forming. This isn't just a story about wine and wisdom. It's about social pressure, about endurance, about surviving a night where everyone thinks they're Socrates. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. Feel grateful that your bedtime routine does not involve public philosophy. Tonight, we're discovering why you would not last a single night at an ancient Greek symposium. And honestly, that's probably for the best. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. At the Threshold. The stone house is cool beneath the evening sky, its thick walls holding on to the last traces of daylight. At the threshold, a man pauses. The street behind him hums faintly with distant voices and footsteps. But here, at the doorway, the noise softens. This is the boundary between the public world and something far more intimate. He bends slightly and removes his leather sandals. They are well worn, creased from long walks across dusty roads and uneven stone. The straps loosen with a soft sound, leather flexing as they are pulled free from tired feet. The soles are marked with the day's travel, fine grit, pale dust, the invisible record of where he has been. He sets them aside carefully, as custom demands. A servant waits nearby. The servant does not speak. He steps forward with quiet efficiency, lifting the sandals from the floor as though this small task has been practiced 1,000 times before. In many ways, it has. At an ancient Greek symposium, nothing begins until this ritual is complete. Shoes are removed. The outside world is left behind. Cleanliness, comfort, and hierarchy are restored in silence. Inside, the house opens into a space designed not for speed, but for lingering. Stone floors stretch inward, cool and smooth beneath bare feet. Lamps flicker softly against the walls, their light already beginning to warm the room with amber tones. The air smells faintly of oil, herbs, and wine waiting to be poured. This moment at the threshold is deceptively simple. Removing sandals is not merely about cleanliness, it is about transition. The man steps out of the dust and into a carefully ordered environment where rules shift. Here, conversations will stretch long into the night. Here, cups will be filled and refilled. Here, voices will rise and fall, guided by custom rather than impulse. The servant gestures subtly, indicating the direction inward. Another servant may soon appear with water, offering to rinse the guest's feet, a courtesy expected, not optional. Comfort is part of the performance. But comfort in this world comes with expectations. The symposium is not a casual gathering. It is structured, ritualized, and demanding in its own way. Guests recline rather than sit. Wine is diluted according to strict ratios. Conversation follows patterns, stories, debates, jokes, challenges, each with its own unspoken rules. To participate well requires stamina, wit, and social awareness. At the threshold, none of that is visible yet. The man straightens, adjusting his cloak now that his feet are bare. He takes a breath. This pause, brief as it is, may be the last quiet moment he will have for hours. Once he steps inside fully, the night will unfold according to its own rhythm, often longer and more intense than first-time guests expect. Many would not last. The symposium is not just about leisure. It tests endurance, of drink, of conversation, of attention. It rewards those who can remain composed, while others grow loud. It exposes those who misjudge their limits. And it does all of this under the soft glow of lamps and polite smiles. The servant, still silent, waits until the man takes his first step forward. Only then does the doorway feel complete, the transition finished. Outside, the street continues its ordinary life. Inside, a different world takes over, one governed by custom, expectation, and the slow unraveling of the night. Bare feet meet cool stone. The man crosses the threshold fully now, leaving his sandals and the protections of the outside world. Chapter 2. Scenic Overlooks and Parchment Shenanigans. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're embarking on a trip more exciting than accidentally wearing mismatched socks to a first date. A high-stakes exploration, of the ancient Greek countryside, the sort of place where the scenery is as breathtaking as a Greek god's abs, and yet, somehow, you're still left pondering if you should have just brought a sandwich instead of this crinkly old parchment map. So, before we dive into the intricacies of hilltop viewings and potential misadventures involving wayward goats, take a moment to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and definitely drop a comment below. Not your life story, unless it involves goats, ancient maps, or embarrassing family vacations. We want the good stuff, people, but, only share if it tickles your fancy. Now, imagine yourself standing atop a lofty hill, the golden sun setting behind sun-kissed mountains, illuminating valleys as lush as someone's. Instagram filter, no editing required. You're holding a simple parchment map that probably saw a few too many accidental coffee spills. Let's be real. If you need directions, do you trust a 2,500-year-old screenplay of hieroglyphic-style doodling and fanciful squiggles? Or would you rather consult Google Maps with the added pinch of sarcasm from your GPS lady telling you to make a U-turn because you missed the turn of a century? As you look out over this ancient landscape, do you wonder how many ancient Greek travelers stood exactly where you are, squinting at the very same view? How many philosophers felt that undeniable urge to turn around and ask a passing goat for directions? Maybe you've got visions of members of the Athenian elite arguing about the most efficient way to water their gardens, while a disinterested goat silently judges them from a distance. It's a little like when you're mid-serious conversation, and that one friend pops a grape in their mouth, leaving you just slightly annoyed, but slightly hungry at the same time. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the classical age, somewhere between 500 BC and 100 AD. You've got the hills of Attica stretching before you, the intoxicating scent of blooming olive trees surrounding you, and a reminder that your parchment map would likely make for a great origami crane if all else fails. As the sun dips lower, you realize you have two options. Either start a philosophical debate with an empty amphora, or, better yet, try not to trip over your own feet while maintaining an air of nonchalance that would impress even the most stoic of Socrates' followers. Speaking of the great thinkers, let's talk about ancient symposiums. They were like gatherings that would put your last family reunion to shame. Imagine reclining on plush cushions while sipping diluted wine, debating the finer points of existence, and stifling your laughter as someone misinterprets platonic love for how to beautifully arrange breadsticks. Yes, you were to think about the nature of life, while someone nearby is trying to impress a few ladies with the ancient practice of balancing grapes on their head. Spoiler alert, it usually ended in a loud crash and a subsequent olive pit war. Stepping further into this idyllic landscape, you're struck by the ancient Greeks' flair for multitasking. You'll see villagers herding sheep and weaving baskets, while simultaneously keeping a watchful eye out for thieves, or more distracting, that neighbor who's always one clever remark away from starting an impromptu philosophical symposium over a spilled jar of olives. Just imagine, two friends are arguing vigorously over whether olive oil or honey was the true nectar of the gods, while one panics over their breakfast slipping dangerously off the table. Let's pause and appreciate the architecture, a stunning amalgamation of stone structures rising magnificently, with columns standing tall as Olympic athletes at the Games. And yet, how many ancient Greeks had no real clue that centuries later, a bunch of tourists would be clamoring to take selfies in front of their hastily built temples? You know, the structures that were more about aesthetic appeal than structural integrity. Here's your takeaway. If anyone ever tries to convince you that architectural knowledge was widespread back then, gather round and regale them with the story of those one-off pillars that barely made it to a second viewing. As you stand atop your hill, absorbing the sights, a sudden thought flashes through your mind. Beyond the breathtaking views, who wouldn't trade their comfortable armchair for the chance to hurl a few philosophical bon mots at incredibly confused farmers? You just know they'd respond with quizzical stares and the faint sound of goats bleating in agreement or disdain. Honestly, it's hard to tell with goats. The gentle wind whips your hair, almost as if nature itself is trying to remind you that you are distinctly unprepared for a wild symposium filled with ancient banter. And yet, as you grasp your map with barely contained hope and perhaps a sprinkle of superstition, you can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of your situation. Will you end up debating the philosophical merits of flying fish with spontaneous zeal? Or maybe you find yourself munching on latent cheese, pondering why no one has yet taught the goats to recite Plato. So, as the sun sets behind the idyllic hills, we're reminded that this chaotic fusion of nature, philosophy, and the alluring, if mildly chaotic, landscape of ancient Greece captures the unpredictable spirit of the Greeks. Always improvising, sometimes confused, but continuously entertaining. And who could ask for anything more as you revel in the beauty of your landscape while contemplating your life choices. Chapter 3. Couch Surfing Through History. Let's talk about seating arrangements at your average ancient Greek symposium, an experience more packed with awkwardness than a modern-day Tinder date in an escape room. Picture this. You find yourself in a vast rectangular room, dimly lit by flickering oil lamps that smell suspiciously like burnt fish. The air is thick with the kind of tension that only comes from too many philosophers trying to define the good life while not having a clue what to do with their own. You're surrounded by low wooden couches, gracefully designed to ensure that any attempt at standing up will make you look like an acrobat out of practice. No chairs in sight, just these luxurious, floor-hugging couches. Basically, a group hug for tired Greeks. You glance around and notice the couches are, of course, lavishly adorned with colorful cushions made of wool. Comfy? Not unless you're a fan of feeling like you're being hugged by a very confused sheep. And so you settle in for a long evening of eye-watering conversations about the nature of reality, all while trying to keep your knees from colliding with your neighbor's face. Ever found yourself wedged between a boisterous drunk and an intense philosophy major? The Symposium is that on repeat. In here, The wine flows like a river of regrets, while you fight to maintain decorum as someone passionately explains why olives are the pinnacle of human achievement. You wonder, what kind of modern-day equivalent would this be? Imagine a room filled with hipsters discussing the merits of avocado toast while refusing to acknowledge the very real threat of gluten. It's like being trapped in a living Yelp review. With a cup of wine in hand, wine that tastes like it was fermented in a rusty bucket, you look around the room and the chaos begins. Men, yes, women were at home, possibly rolling their eyes, recline awkwardly but elegantly on their couches, some in togas, while others are likely debating whether to ditch cultural norms and just wear their bed sheets. Every now and then, an overzealous guest makes grand gestures, causing his cup's contents to spill, resulting in a small but hilarious wine fountain. You can hear the murmur of conversations mixing like an improper cocktail. Is it possible to be happy without owning a vineyard? One philosopher muses, as another counters, what if happiness is just an illusion? Like my chance of actually making it through this night sober. It's like attending a very verbose episode of The Real World, but without the dramatic confessional segments and more dangling participles. And then there are the food platters. Imagine if your high school had a cafeteria run by a team of nutritional anarchists, tossing together grapes, olives, cheese, and possibly some ancient, questionably sourced fish to create an oddly appealing but simultaneously repulsive array of options. While you should be focusing on the deep thoughts around you, all you can think about is how these snacks are basically the culinary version of a game show. Will it be delicious, or will your stomach betray you an hour later? If you're feeling a bit drowsy from the wine and philosophical ramblings, it's no wonder. Those couches, they offer an inviting embrace that tries to be nurturing, but ultimately resembles a soft trap. Your eyelids begin to flutter like they're in an awkward battle against the weight of history. But before you drift away, remember, if it helps, maybe try to picture this as a really high-stakes episode of Survivor, Ancient Greece Edition. Midway through your perceptions and hypothesis on human existence, you suddenly contemplate how many people fell asleep in the middle of these life-altering discussions, only to wake up in a mild panic, wondering where they were. Did I just embarrass myself in front of Plato? How do I explain this to my mother? And just like that, the wine and the conversations flow on and on. You can feel the atmosphere thick with pauses, awkward laughter, and grand declarations. But inevitably, someone pitches their voice higher in excitement as they begin yet another iteration of, "But what is truth?" You've officially entered the world of unending debates, a paradox that surely creates a tension headache even back in 500 BC. So here you are, in this world of couches and deep thinkers, of questionable distinctions, on edge as you watch fellow guests splay themselves on cushions like awkward starfish. As the evening continues, you silently draft your own exit strategy. Do I have to make it until the end? Can I just roll off these cushions and pretend I'm going for a midnight snack? And just like a 20-second nap on a couch that seems to last hours, you know you won't last much longer in this arena of half-baked ideas and free-flowing wine. So, as you prepare to escape from the realm of questionable life choices and poorly timed naps, remember this. Each inspiration might be rich in theory, but light on actual substance. Frankly, it's the beauty of a Greek symposium, inspiring enlightened thought that can turn sour faster than milk left out in the summer sun. Doesn't this all feel oddly familiar? Like being in a crowded cafe, surrounded by the sound of low chatter, questionable choices in your drink, and a hearty dash of existential dread, just without the existential dread. And hey, no wines were harmed in the making of this evening. At least, not yet. Chapter 4. Couch Crusaders of Classical Clumsiness. Let's dive back into this plush pit of ancient Greek soirees. Imagine now, as you recline on lavishly draped couches, yes, couches that probably haven't been washed since the last time a philosopher considered bathing a moral dilemma. You find yourself begrudgingly accepting your fate. You've just become the unwitting guest at a symposium where the only thing flowing faster than the wine is the stream of questionable logic. Visualize this. You're stretched out on your very own couch, arms splayed like an aristocrat having a mild existential crisis. You're sporting a splendid white linen tunic, perfect for blending in with those who take their grape juice somewhat more seriously. With every movement, the fabric whispers like a secret. You are not in a luxurious spa. You are surrounded by thinkers and drinkers who've clearly misunderstood the concept of moderation. The tantalizing aroma of questionable cheeses mingles with an inexplicable scent that might be feet or possibly an entire philosophy department. The symphony of sounds envelops you. Faint laughter, the clatter of pottery, and the occasional philosophical debate spiraling into absurdity. Ever wondered what it might feel like to be trapped in a giant burrito of cushion while simultaneously listening to a man in a toga argue that happiness is merely the absence of imagined problems? Well, welcome to your reality, friend. You find it amusing that modern-day social gatherings are often criticized for being superficial, while ancient Greeks just sat on couches and discussed life's biggest mysteries like a bunch of very confused philosophers. Speaking of confusion, did anyone ever tell you that reclining on these couches requires a considerable level of athletic prowess akin to that of a circus acrobat? Carefully arranged at odd angles, these couches promote a yoga-like flexibility you didn't sign up for, but here you are. If getting up requires more effort than scaling Mount Olympus, you've truly entered the realm of ancient couch etiquette. Well, right now, your knees are wedged uncomfortably close to someone whose ideas are about as solid as a block of feta cheese left out on a hot day. And the wine. Let's discuss the wine. It's a robust affair, full-bodied, and arrives in cups that seem to function more as a suggestion than an actual drinking vessel. Ever sipped a concoction so potent it turns your thoughts from, "What's Plato's ideal state?" straight to, "Is it just me, or do we keep seeing the same grape over and over?" Drinking here feels less like enjoying a fine vintage and more like doing squat thrusts with Dionysus. Lots of resistance and questionable results. You take a moment to examine your surroundings, and, no surprise, the decor rivals that of your weird uncle's basement. Decorated between half-read scrolls and wilted flowers that were likely a symbol of some grand ideology, your fellow Symposium dwellers seem utterly invested in the rigorous discussion of the day. Out of the corner of your eye, you catch a glimpse of a towering intellectual reenacting a scene from tragedy, wildly gesturing with a piece of bread. You can't help but think this is just a quirky way to get attention. Oh, look, another artisanal loaf interpretation. What's next? A philosophical gluten-free manifesto? Among the tangle of conversations, one voice stands out, not because of volume, but sheer passionate bewilderment. Is love just an illusion? Or is it, perhaps, a much larger construction, much like these unsightly couches? It's a pitfall of pondering, really. You notice someone nodding fervently, pretending their wine-soaked wisdom is somehow enlightening, his cup steadily growing more precarious. One more enthusiastic gesture, and your toga neighbor could be the proud inventor of the wine fountain, causing epics of laughter to cascade around like bad punchlines at a comedy club. But alas, a part of you, let's call it your better judgment, begins to weigh heavily upon your shoulders. Sleepiness settles in like an uninvited guest, hinting at the edges of your vision. You think, between monologues, is this how history eternally plays out? A group of intoxicated individuals discussing weighty matters, while a few simply drool on a couch as they dream of becoming a public rest area? Your eyelids flutter as one particularly uninspired discussion about the merits of olive oil begins to sound like the soothing hum of a lullaby. Try as you might to stay awake, your inner voice drifts away into a poetic slumber. The couch cradles you with the softness of a cloud, or perhaps more accurately, the softness akin to an overly indulgent pastry that has forgotten its purpose. Comfort can be deceitful, especially in an environment where everyone around you is effectively a philosopher seer, discussing the very essence of existence, while you're just trying to figure out how to keep your head from rolling off into the hummus dish. And here lies the irony. You came to glean wisdom, but what you truly acquired is an important life lesson: when to check out of the symposium gracefully, especially when faced with philosophical debate and very real risks of snoring uncontrollably in front of your peers. One final glance at the chaotic melange of ideas, exquisite struggles, and questionable life choices around you earns a ponderous chuckle. Who knew discussing olives could wear a person out, you wonder, just before surrendering to that delicious void of sleep where ancient Greek wisdom and modern absurdity blend together like a fine wine and cheese platter, full of significance, yet unmistakably, at times, a little hard to digest. Chapter 5. The Art of Couch Lying at a Symposium. Let's take a moment to appreciate the unique art form known as Symposium Lounge Positioning. This is the gentle dance of reclining, a delicate exercise in comfort as you prepare to socialize like a true ancient Greek. Now we return to your plush cushion, personal throne, at this hilariously chaotic gathering. The light from the flickering oil lamps softly bathes your surroundings, creating an ambience that screams both elegance and who needs a bathroom break? You've leaned back into the countless cushions, a truly nest of nap, if you will. As you settle in, the plushness embraces you like a long-lost relative who only shows up during holidays and always brings an awkwardly intense hug. But lo and behold, these cushions, while luxurious, might just be the reason you discover yoga in the form of tightly curated contortions. Your head is propped up just so, but no amount of strategic lying can conceal how ridiculous you might appear to the wine-infused philosophers surrounding you. Not to mention the challenge of retaining dignity while attempting to juggle a plate of olives and a cup of potent wine. You're like a circus performer. They have the balls, you have the carbs, and both require an astounding level of dexterity that's not in a typical day's schedule. Speaking of carbs, the confectionery chaos of food is indeed quite suspect. You glance down at your plate and wonder, am I here for philosophical enlightenment or an olive-eating contest? The olives glisten under the light, staring back at you like judgmental little orbs. The range of dips would make a modern tapas bar weep in shame. Chickpeas, something vaguely resembling hummus, and a rotating buffet of feta cheese blocks that surely just finished their last argument. Ah, let us now appreciate the wine, your third companion of the evening. This is not your average grocery store selection. No, no. You've got vintage Greek wine that could double as rocket fuel. With every sip, you might find yourself slipping into a deeper abyss of contemplative thoughts. You know the ones. What is the true nature of an olive? Am I still capable of forming coherent thoughts after 3 sips? The volume of laughter around you bubbles up as if the whole room heard your internal questions. Good luck staying incognito in your state of dreamy revelation. As you attempt to elevate your inner philosopher, you inadvertently initiate a snack-off with the chap on your left, who's cheerfully trying to propagate his love for olive oil while gesturing wildly. One wrong gesture, and he could very likely knock over his wine, a beautiful cascade of deep red, which may or may not splatter all over your delicate tunic. You can't help but wonder how they'll document this philosophical catastrophe in the annals of history. Man dresses in wine, a cautionary tale. Let's talk about the article of clothing you chose for this soiree, shall we? Your tunic is a fine specimen, flowing and summery, remarkably breathable, unless, of course, You find yourself in the trajectory of an errant meatball launched by an overly enthusiastic philosopher from across the room. You catch his eye for just a moment, and that almost unsettling exchange sparkles with a connection that can only be described as mutual embarrassment. Meanwhile, poor Socratic Anteros, an unfortunate nickname given to the host who is now mid-monologue on the virtues of moderation, looks alarmingly close to toppling into the centerpiece. You can see it starting, the leaning, the swaying, and then, bam! He could soon be the glorious foible of the evening, the accidental destroyer of a couplet of poorly crafted ceramic vases. You can't help but chuckle at the thought. Somewhere in the cosmos, Aristotle must be face-palming at the lack of gravitational awareness. Your quest for comfort continues. You survey other guests and realize you're not alone. You spot a fellow symposium goer awkwardly trying to balance his plate on his knee. It's a delicate operation, akin to an experienced caterer attempting a handstand while juggling. You snicker silently as he battles with his feet, one wiggling, trying to find that sweet spot on the cushion, while the other seems determined to explore the depths of the couch in search of rogue olives. The air is thick with laughter and pungent aromas that blend into a strange fragrance you can only describe as, "What were you thinking, ancient food stylists?" As you inhale deeply, it feels like a culinary adventure gone wrong, like a casserole misstep that somehow made it to the main stage. That's when you realize that every conversation is punctuated not just by profound thoughts, but by the symphony of oops that happens when you're trying to serve more wine without spilling. In the midst of it all, your composure is starting to wane. You glance at your surroundings one last time, fighting the laughter bubbling up inside you. Somehow, in this grand tapestry of philosophical musings, slapstick humor thrives. With the weight of existential dread laden both on and off your broad shoulders, you realize this symposium might just be the closest thing to a gentle comedy of errors that ever graced ancient Greece. So here you are, reclining with flaunting elegance and struggling hilarity, a true student of the couch-lounging arts. And just as you thought wisdom might grace you, you stumble upon a simple truth. The greatest philosophical question of all may just be, how do I avoid getting crumbs in my hair while balancing my wine, plate, and dignity? Ah, wisdom eludes us all, doesn't it? But hey, at least you're comfy, and for the moment, the night is young, and possibly downright ridiculous. Chapter 6. Shadows and Giggles at the Symposium. Ah, the sophisticated atmosphere of a symposium, a gathering of the great philosophers of ancient Greece, all sharing ideas and rambling stories, while artfully pretending to care about what their neighbors are saying. Picture this: flickering oil lamps on small bronze stands, casting long shadows across the stone floor of a dimly lit hall, illuminating not only the grandeur of intellectualism, but also the baffling spectacle of humans trying not to spill wine on their best tunics. Can you make sense of that juxtaposition? I mean, it's the ancient version of who wore it better. But instead of clothes, it's all about who can keep their dignity intact after 3 cups of wine. The air is thick with the aromatic delights of olives and herbs, mingling unsettlingly with that oh-so-sweet scent of overindulgence. It's as if the very essence of philosophical luxury has decided to throw caution to the wind and invite a hint of desperation along for the ride. Just imagine for a second how ideal your evenings were back in this ancient Greek utopia, feasting on delectable bites, yet tightly clutching your stomach while simultaneously engaging in intellectual debate. Now, as you settle deeper into your plush cushions, which, I can attest, are more comfortable than your office chair after a long week, you can't help but notice the curious dynamic of the room. Over to your right, you see a fellow guest trying to maintain an air of decorum while their arms are flailing about wildly like a bird in a windstorm. They're desperately trying to emphasize a point about the meaning of life, arms outstretched, while simultaneously endangering the wine glasses stacked precariously on the little table. It's an act more dangerous than it sounds, like balancing a spoon on your nose while learning how to juggle chainsaws. And don't look now, but Socratic Enteros, the host who apparently forgot to take his philosophy classes on moderation, is well into a monologue that's escalating dangerously close to full-blown opera. His arms wave with such vigor you half expect him to take flight. The intricate gestures undoubtedly originated from his intense internal struggle. To drink or not to drink? Spoiler alert, he chose drink, and so did you. As the oil lamps flicker, casting jazzy patterns on the stone walls, you ponder how late-night conversations in the age of philosophy are merely contemporary book clubs turned up to 11 with a touch of chaos. It's a cacophony of half-thought-out insights and wildly animated gestures, punctuated by the occasional example of food catapulting through the air in disastrous fashion. Did someone say flying meatball? You swear the ancient Greek diet was heavily reliant on what you can hurl while trying to sound intelligent. Your gaze turns to the plate of olives once again. Those judgmental little orbs are staring back at you as if they're in on a secret, and you're missing the punchline. Perhaps their polled philosophy on life reads something along the lines of, "We were once the great taste of olives. Now we're just tiny balls of judgment." Admittedly, they have a point. You're left wondering if the olive's texture or taste is more profound, all while balancing a refreshing drink as you squint at your fellow guests' antics. You chuckle. Their debate on the essence of being seems to have devolved into who can toss a feta ball further. Meanwhile, your friend to the left, engrossed in extremely puzzling conversation about the ethical implications of eating olives, and also battling his plate, which seems more slippery than a seal at a circus, haphazardly lurches sideways. His knee finds its way into your wine glass, and you brace yourself, feeling the panic set in as the precious liquid begins to cascade outward like an ancient flood narrative. You can't help but reckon with the shadowy figures lurking at the edges of your newfound reality. Are these literary archetypes, or are they just an unintended splash zone for your philosophical journey through the ages? Now, to understand your attire, this gala's fashion choices warrant a headshake. You've donned a fine tunic, perfectly tailored, breathable, and absolutely flattering, until a rogue meatball decided that exploring gravity was a fun game to join last minute. The tunic becomes your canvas of public humiliation, now adorned with splotches that could easily be the canvas of a modern art piece titled Fermented Peril. As you try to maintain a semblance of sanity in this swirling sea of absurdity, a striking thought echoes through your mind. Is this what all great thinkers grapple with? Ancient Greek night-outs successfully turned into slapstick comedy. Watching your fellow philosophers navigate metaphysical concepts while teetering on couches could lead one to deduct that the pursuit of wisdom wasn't merely about knowledge. It was clearly about knowing how to balance wine glasses on wobbly legs. Despite the chaos around, you can't deny that this communal experience is woven together with hearty laughter, shared awkwardness, and too many olives. In the world of the ancient Symposium, you learn something truly profound. At the end of the night, knowledge might just mean figuring out how to avoid getting crumbs in your hair whilst savoring wine and discussing the universe, an art form that doubles as a comedy show spectacular in the making. The greatest wisdom, you realize, might be not wise at all, but simply relaxing in the embrace of laughter, oil, and a good pair of cushions. Chapter 7. The Enigmatic Elegance of the Crater. Ah, the centerpiece of our symposium, a massive bronze crater glinting seductively under the flickering oil lamps, filled to the brim with dark purple liquid that could only be called wine if your taste buds have gone on strike. Picture this bewitching vessel, rising like a majestic mountain of indulgence, silently judging each sip you take, all the while winking at you, as if to say, "Go on, I dare you." Now, if you think about it, this crater is more than just a decorative bowl. It is the epicenter of debauchery, a whispered promise of laughter, scandal, and possibly a festoon of regrets by dawn. You're not quite sure what's in that wine. Grapes, herbs, perhaps even a hint of regret from last night's escapades. But one thing's for certain, it poses a more significant threat to your dignity than any philosophical debate floating around the room. If these walls could talk, they'd probably start recounting tales of far better men than you who met their end flailing awkwardly after one too many intellectual sips. Let's talk about wine etiquette, shall we? It's all well and good to sip delicately from a fancy chalice, but here at our symposium, the unspoken rule appears to be, the more wine, the wilder the conversation. Ever tried discussing Pythagorean theorem with a belly full of fermented grape juice? Spoiler alert, it turns into an impromptu competition on who can sing "Row, row, row your boat" in 4 different ancient dialects. At this point, free will flies out the window, and you find yourself wondering if perhaps philosophy is just a fancy way of saying, let's all get sloshed and argue about clouds. And as your hands grapple with the intricacies of holding an intricately designed wine cup, let's just call it a vessel of questionable judgment, you gain a front row seat to your neighbor's interpretation of gravity. You know, the moment right before someone attempts to stand, only to discover that balance, like a lost philosophical concept, eludes him. Suddenly, there's a cascade of red liquid sprinting across the room, creating a makeshift river of regret that would make even the gods weep. Bravo! You've just witnessed a new form of art, abstract expressionism utilizing Dionysian themes. Ah, Dionysus, the patron god of wine and revelry, would surely have loved this chaos. I envision him floating through the Symposium like a wine-infused ghost, giving life lessons from his toga-clad existence. Ah, yes, he'd muse. Wisdom flows like this wine, often without any real direction. A sympathetic nod from your fellow philosophical drinkers would encourage you to share your feelings about mortality, while slipping precariously onto a pile of abandoned olive pits. Now, the olives, the eternal tormentors of our Symposium experience. These tiny fruit bombs are the ultimate distraction. What's worse than losing your drink on the floor? Spilling it all while trying to catch a rogue olive that's made a break for freedom, leaping toward a less than gracious landing in the lap of an unsuspecting philosopher. They're the true gladiators of the feast, boldly flaunting their slippery selves while you grapple with sip versus debate. Halfway through the evening, the room transforms into a chaotic symphony, a cacophony of tipsy musings and inexplicable laughter, escalating like a classic Greek tragedy, but one where everyone lives, but loses their sense of reality and personal space. Over there in the corner? Yes, the corner, where Socratic Anteros now expresses his views on the meaning of life, gesturing wildly as if he's reciting the world's worst opera. His animated oration is a comic ballet of sorts, arms flailing dramatically, sending olives airborne and threatening the integrity of that ever-so-precious wine. Here's where it gets particularly intriguing. You start to wonder if the crater is merely a vessel for wine, or a secret portal to another dimension, one where the philosophical musings have been replaced with screeching laughter and misunderstandings of metaphysical proportions. You're left pondering the mysteries of the universe while simultaneously thinking, how can anyone be so graceful while holding a cup full of chaos? And then, in a flash, you find yourself knee-deep in existential dread and sticky wine-stained cushions, desperately seeking solace from your philosophical peers. Spoiler alert. Grappling with someone else's heated debate on ethics while trying to dodge flying food rarely ends well. You've just made the bold choice to quote Aristotle, but let's be real. You've now become a prime candidate for the next round of awkward karaoke. As the night rolls deep into the dark corners of overindulgence, the crater becomes less about fine appreciation of ancient grapes and more about communion with the gods, those gluttonous deities of wine and clear dance. The discussions twist and turn through history, pop culture, and random rumors you fervently hope aren't true. Yet somehow, in this product of indulgent chaos, each slosh of wine teaches you a truth more profound than all the scrolls in the library. Sometimes, laughter and wine are the real philosophers of life, and that's a lesson worth toasting to. So, dear listener, should you ever find yourself at an ancient Greek symposium, just remember, it's not the philosophy that matters. It's the crater, the olives, and the ridiculous escapades of your fellow night owls that will truly define your experience. And as the night comes to an end, may your regrets be few, your laughter be loud, and may the crater always be your closest confidant, a bronze bowl filled with the nectar of good times, mischief, and philosophers flailing about in search of wisdom, or a well-aimed meatball. Chapter 8. The Art of Pouring Oily Wine at the Symposium. Let's talk about the fine art of pouring wine, shall we? Imagine our faithful servant, an unassuming figure draped in a tunic, approaching the scene like a stealthy ninja of the liquid world. Clutched in one hand is a beautifully decorated ceramic jug, adorned with scenes of frolicking nymphs and perhaps the occasional goat, because, let's face it, what ancient Greek party would be complete without a goat? The jug looks like it could have been a selling point at a pottery shop, yet here it is, preparing to unleash the true essence of a symposium, a heavy, viscous wine that could double as a glue for your next DIY project. As the server tilts the jug, thick, syrupy wine oozes into the wide, shallow drinking cup, creating a sound reminiscent of a peculiar animal trying to escape a sticky situation. The wine doesn't just pour, it cascades with a languid grace, as if the liquid is auditioning for a role in an ancient drama about the trials of drinking. Behold, it seems to proclaim, I'm not just any wine, I'm an experience. And experience it will be. This isn't your grocery store Chardonnay. No, sir, this is the kind of wine that declares loudly, you better be ready for me. Once in the cup, the liquid swirls, releasing a pungent bouquet that intertwines notes of ripe grape with a hint of something that might be regret. But who's keeping track? You might call it vintage, but rest assured, the only thing aged about it is the wisdom of your neighbors attempting to take philosophical debates to new heights, fueled by dubious amounts of alcohol. How does one even prepare oneself for a drink that feels like it should come with a set of safety instructions? Perhaps the first step is simply to gauge the odds of maintaining dignity while traversing the labyrinth of philosophical discourse. Spoiler alert, they are not high. With every sip, you inch closer to courage wrapped in liquefied grape, your inhibitions fading faster than the olive pits scattered across the floor. As you're awash in this delightful concoction, you start to contemplate how ancient Greeks must have conjured their wine-drinking etiquette. Did they have a handbook? How to appear wise while accidentally drenching your toga in Merlot? Because let's be honest, the odds of your toga evading a wine spill are about as high as your chances of understanding the latest trends in Greek mathematics after your third cup. Right now, you're surrounded by a gathering of very serious men who chose to sneak away from their responsibilities to debate vital issues like the meaning of life or who has the best hairstyle among town council members. Spoiler alert, it's not you, even if you did spend an hour trying to finesse your curls. Imagine one philosopher, let's call him Socrates the slightly inebriated, leaning forward, gesturing wildly as he attempts to correlate your very existence to the path of a wandering grape. Mid-sentence, he leans too far, tipping precariously before that wine cup you just so kindly filled takes to the air in what can only be described as a liquid ballet, painting the wall with shades of regret and brilliant red. And here we thought only artists had the privilege of creating masterpieces. You can see how this whole wine symposium thing starts to spiral into a dizzying dance of debauchery and deep thoughts. Deep thoughts that become increasingly less sensible with every cup poured. One moment, you're deeply engaged in Socratic irony, and the next, you're barking like a dog because you suddenly feel like embodying the spirit of Dionysus himself. "Follow your heart," you shout, raising your cup triumphantly, only to realize your heart was just hoping to stay upright on a pile of cushions. As hour after hour blends into an absurd tapestry of charm and chaos, the crater remains a silent sentinel of mischief in the center of the room, filled with wine that flows like stories told by slightly unhinged uncles at family gatherings. The best part? This entire symposium is under the guise of high culture, while in reality it's more akin to a 24-hour karaoke binge at a dive bar, where the prize for best performance is just a lack of embarrassment in the morning. And what about you? You've just gone from an average evening to being the unintentional star of an ancient Greek reality show called Survivor Symposium. If laughter keeps you alive, then tonight, my friend, is your chance to become a legendary figure, one who needs only a toga, an irresponsible serving of opulent wine, and a flair for the dramatic. Because when the chronicles of time write about the great philosophers of the symposium, they'll ultimately find space for the modern-day hero who turned every spilled olive and misplaced sip into a timeless tale of laughter and chaos. So, dear listener, simply lean back and soak in the joy of it all. Life has never been so absurdly beautiful, and the crater never fails to remind us. Each sip brings us closer to understanding that sometimes wisdom comes not from the depths of philosophy, but from the innermost corners of a wine-soaked memory. Cheers to that. Chapter 9. Diluting the Unthinkable. A Toast to Fine Living. Let's talk about wine mixing, shall we? Now picture this. A marble pitcher, glistening under the dim glow of oil lamps, is poised above a communal crater, a large mixing vessel that looks less like a pot and more like your aunt's quirky holiday decoration, if she were a Greek aristocrat, of course. The whole scene feels a bit like a casual barista squinting at the lineup of coffees. Will a dash of water in the espresso make it more profound? Spoiler, no one's buying it here either. The journey begins as clear water from that stylish marble pitcher, a true statement piece, cascades into the crater, a sound reminiscent of gentle waves on a Mediterranean beach, but with a hilarious twist. This isn't your calm ocean. It's more akin to a raucous toddler splashing about as the water merrily plops into a sea of dark, viscous wine, creating a swirling tempest that seems to mock anyone who thought this symposium would just be a serene discussion about the meaning of good living. As the two liquids mingle, the air fills with a bouquet of aromas that can only be described as wine-soaked dad jokes. There's that rich, slightly musty grape scent, mixed with a touch of what may or may not be last week's leftover olives. Seriously, who decided that bringing snacks that have seen better days was a good idea? Ah, yes, the fine pairing of fermented grape and something that almost resembles food. You can practically hear the attendees puffing themselves up with wisdom, all while secretly grimacing at the thought of consuming anything that isn't fermented. Now, let's take a moment here. Imagine yourself a willing participant in this ancient bash. How did you get here? Did you just wander in after Googling free wine tasting on the dusty scrolls of antiquity? What misguided connection led you to this moment where you must sip freely, but beware of the wine-soaked folly lurking within? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 400 BC, where fine living is deemed essential, even if it involves water and thick wine colliding in a social experiment nobody signed up for. And yes, you might have accidentally signed a contract with an ancient Greek god while you were at it. The crater, gleaming temptingly and holding too much promise and uncertainty, does offer a hint of decorum. After all, every great philosopher knows that a perfectly mixed drink can elevate even the most mundane debate. As you watch the colors blend together like a chaotic kaleidoscope, you realize this is but a reflection of the actual symposium, one glorious mess of ideas, opinions, and questionable decisions. Think of it as a high-stakes game of truth or dare, where the only consequence is losing your dignity, or potentially denouncing your loyalty to your toga. And oh, the toga! Let's not forget about what you're wearing, or what you're unable to wash after that unfortunate grape juice accident. The fabric hangs off your shoulders like a lazy cat that chose comfort over style. Is it slip-resistant? Not in the least. As the evening unfolds, you'll find that glistening wine stains become the ultimate conversation starters. Oh, is that a vintage 400 BC splash? How sophisticated. You'll soon realize that every drop contributes to the history of your toga, and you can practically hear the fabric whispering, "Thanks for that. I'm now both a fashion statement and a conversation piece." Between bountiful servings of diluted wine and lofty aspirations of intellectual depth, chaos reigns supreme. Philosophers are arguing passionately, while somehow managing to spill enough wine to flood a small village. One particularly boisterous dude, let's call him Plato the poor enthusiast, is gesticulating wildly, his cup flying into the air as if he's auditioning for a role in Greece's Got Talent. Should he be disqualified for excessive spillage? The debate is heated, and you, by default, are now the judge, jury, and potential victim of grape juice flying in all directions. Soon enough, the conversations spiral into the absurd, where Socratic methods meld with drunken antics. What do you mean I'm not an idealist because I can't balance my wine glass? Ask yourself this: is it truly wisdom you acquire over these cups, or merely an uncanny ability to navigate the dreary labyrinth of your mind while drunkenly dancing with metaphors? You ponder the fine art of using a wine-induced epiphany to argue about life's meanings, but only succeed in embodying the spirit of Dionysus, or your mother's basement, whichever is closer. As the evening wears on, laughter becomes your carrying force, more reliable than your ability to regulate liquid intake. You come to appreciate the philosophy that the best nights come not from perfectly refined wine or dignified discussions, but from an utter abandonment of sober reality. In the end, you and your toga are not mere witnesses, but the stars of an epic comedy that will be retold for generations. Just remember, on the morning after, when your wine-soaked toga looks more goblet of the gods than poetic philosophy, you may want to keep your stories slightly embellished and your drink severely diluted. So, as the wine continues to swirl and the laughter echoes through the marbled halls, understand that sometimes life's greatest philosophical debates occur between wild spills and hearty guffaws. So settle in, sip on the funny moments, and remember, sometimes it's not about surviving the symposium. It's about making a fantastic comedy of life's little spills. Cheers to that. Chapter 10. The Toga Tango, a night at the Symposium. Let's set the scene, shall we? Imagine yourself back in time, reclining lazily on a couch that appears more decorative than comfortable. You might call it a couch, but really, it's more like a glorified marble slab with enough pillows to make a medieval knight wonder if he should just start a pillow fight. Yes, welcome to an ancient Greek symposium, where discussions about philosophy happen with all the grace of a cat attempting to land on a windowsill after chasing a laser pointer. The ambience is akin to a modern-day garden party, if your garden were crowded with men in flowing robes, sipping wine diluted with water, and discussing the existential crises of their latest goat-herding endeavors. Yes, my dear slumbering listener, it's a raucous affair, with more laughter than actual enlightenment. You're definitely not in a quiet book club discussing The Great Gatsby, but rather a frenzied commotion that would give your last office holiday party a run for its money. Now, close your eyes and picture the guests. They're sprawled across couches, with cups elevated like Olympic torches, eyes sparkling with the kind of mischief you'd expect at a high school reunion. They gaze at each other, reclining in a way that suggests, I'm both relaxed and borderline incapable of upright posture. The charm of the symposium is that you can float whatever ridiculous idea strikes your fancy, just as long as you keep that wine glass full. Can you smell that? It's a delightful olfactory blend of musty amphora and something resembling olives that may have seen better days. It's like a Greek farmer's market met a damp cellar, and they argued over who had the superior scent. Somewhere between discussions of the nature of beauty and the irrationality of love, someone will inadvertently spill their drink, creating an atmospheric effect akin to avant-garde art. Oh, look, it's the drunken philosopher's collection, you'd exclaim, waving your hand dramatically. The living room would erupt in laughter, as if you'd just announced that Socrates had shown up in a Speedo. So tell me, dear listener, you might muse in your half-dream, did anyone mention the charm of wearing a toga? Because, oh, beloved friend, the toga is as delightful as it is impractical. One moment, you're the proud owner of flowing fabric, and the next it's slumped off your shoulder like a disinterested cat. How is it that such an exquisite garment managed to be designed without any thought for actual bodily function? Think about it. One gust of wind, and you've got a wardrobe malfunction that could make you the talk of tomorrow's gossip. Ah, yes. Remember when Lycus was giving his grand speech, and he accidentally became one with the floor? Ah, yes, Lycus, the poor fellow trying to impress with discourse on ethics while wrestling his toga back into position. Is this fashion, you wonder, grappling with your own attire, perhaps a more modern pajama pant and mismatched socks? Let's face it, sock fashion at a symposium is about as sophisticated as a goat on roller skates. And what about the food? Surely someone is nibbling on delicacies that could just as easily be part of a school cafeteria. You thought cheese platters were de rigueur? Think again. The finest banquet menu might include figs, bread so hard it could be mistaken for ancient weaponry, and olives, because someone at the symposium lost a bet involving a produce market. Are we supposed to eat these, you'd ponder, holding a questionable piece of cheese while knowing it's probably just as old as some of the philosophies circulating around the room. As a guest, you're expected to converse cheerfully, but with every sip of watered-down wine, your eloquence begins to evaporate faster than Socrates can down a cup. You turn to your neighbor, seeking solace, and find them unceremoniously dozing off, cup still gripped in hand like an ancient trophy. That's right. Nothing speaks of a symposium quite like philosophical debates morphing into snores, creating an unintended soundtrack for the aged drama unfolding before you. If you think the mix of conversation and wine leads to social brilliance, think again. One man, let's call him Demos, realizes he's on a quest for the meaning of life while trying to balance his drink. Between his epiphanies, he knocks over a bowl of grapes, sending them rolling like an ancient game of bowling. Behold, the first grape scooting contest. All the while, you're trying to keep your dignity intact, subconsciously debating whether your current fascination with cheese or philosophy is an indication of your impending adulthood. Spectacles of cardboard cutout philosophers come rabble-rousing back to life as the evening presses on, a wild tableau of laughter, rustling robes, and occasional existential dread, with the enchanting combination of wine, nonsensical debates, and the ever-present risk of toga-related embarrassment. The symposium morphs into a comedy of errors. It's not unlike your attempt to bond over Zoom quizzes. No tangible score, just a bunch of "how did you end up here" moments rolling forward, propelled mainly by the inertia of hilarity, fermented grapes, and the realization that tomorrow might come with a hangover and questionable memories. So, dear listener, as the night weaves itself into an absurd tapestry of clinking cups and tangential conversations, you realize the most profound truth of all. Sometimes it's not about deciphering life's mysteries, but about embracing the simple chaos of revelry. And if tomorrow's awkward silences are anything like tonight's escapades, well, you can just keep going back to the wine and pretending you had it all under control. You can't make this up. Chapter 11. The Gesticulating Philosopher. A Night of Wild Ideas. As you settle into the swirling chaos of the symposium, let's take a moment to appreciate the art of philosophical discourse. It's not merely a babbling brook of ideas, no, my dear listener. It is more like an overflowing bowl of wine, where the only thing that flows clearer than the liquid is an ancient philosopher's wild gesticulations. Picture, if you will, a philosopher, let's call him Lysander, leaning on a cushion that is basically a glorified sack of feathers, his left arm numb from hours of waving it around as if he were conducting an orchestra of misplaced thoughts. "Let's talk about love," he declares, his hands slicing through the air like a very confused bird. Lysander is convinced that his abstract musings will leave everyone in awe. But let's face it, at least half the attendees are trying to remember if they left the goat unattended while discussing the nature of beauty. You can almost hear the sound of wine splashing as a nearby guest laughs too loudly at a joke that probably wasn't even meant to be funny. The air is ripe with the smell of diluted wine and questionable cheeses, just like the last time you tried to recreate your favorite Italian dish at a dinner party. Only here, the stakes are higher, and the punishment for a culinary faux pas is an eternity of being the subject of philosophical ridicule. What is the essence of cheese? Lysander ponders, spinning his finger in the air, oblivious to that curious drip of wine slipping from his cup onto the floor. The floor, dear listener, which is an ambitious mix of overripe grapes and half-formed philosophies. Imagine yourself trying to engage in such high-minded conversation. "'Tis the question of our existence," you might reply, while desperately attempting to yank your own toga back into position. Yet every whisper of a breeze sends it cascading off your shoulder like spontaneous confetti at a regrettable birthday party. How is it that the Greeks could master philosophy but struggled mightily with the concept of fabric that stayed put? Lysander, undeterred by his liquid courage and an audience that's more interested in snacks than substance, sporadically punctuates his speech with grand gestures. At one point, he's mimicking the motions of a bird taking flight, which might be impressive if we were at a symposium about ornithology. But alas, here it's merely distracting. You find yourself instinctively ducking, wondering if he'll soon be dodging a stray piece of cheese flying out of that wildly gesticulating arm. You can't help but wonder, is literal flight that different from philosophical thought? As laughter bubbles from the couches, another guest yells, "Aren't we all just like grapes?" Now, you're unsure if he's debating philosophy or just expressing his confusion regarding the wine's inspirations. You glance around to see heads nodding in understanding. Right, grapes! Pressed, fermented, and ultimately to be left to rot in a symposium talk. Just when you think this couldn't get any more absurd, Lysander decides to backflip off his cushion, a gesture that might have been meant to convey enlightenment, but instead results in what historians would someday call the Great Toga Tumble, a spectacle that leaves audiences giggling while plaintively wondering if he's all right. Spoiler alert, he will be eloquently draping a toga over his head with newfound wisdom about gravity come morning. And what's this? A debate about the nature of reality has broken out. You squint your eyes, trying to keep up as one man insists reality is just an illusion, while another argues that it's a series of unfortunate events that merely leads to bigger headaches. Sound familiar? It's not dissimilar to those late-night Netflix sessions we all endure, flipping through genres until your head spins, and suddenly it's 3 a.m. What even is reality at that hour? Oh, but you can't ignore the seductive allure of the snack tray, can you? Figs so squishy they might just hit the floor, and bread that feels like your lost ambitions stuffed into a hard crust. Perfect for a mid-debate snack attack. You try to take a bite, only to find it's hard enough to double as a makeshift doorstop. Crumbs fly as you sneeze, and right on cue, someone quips, "Is that the sound of enlightenment or mere food failure?" As the atmosphere gets rowdier, perhaps influenced by the workshops on how to drown your confusion in wine, you can see murmurs of plans brewing for a best argument contest. Titan of philosophy, or just a guy named Nicodemus who hasn't had a coherent thought since last Tuesday? Who knows? But the excitement is contagious. So, dear listener, as Lysander gesticulates wildly and conversations swirl like wine in an amphora, you realize that the escapades are far from serious. It's its own comedic chaos, where profound thoughts can collide with physical comedy in such a way that you momentarily ponder whether life, after all, is merely an extended symposium of mistakes and laughter. And who could ever tire of that? Enjoy these shenanigans while you can. Tomorrow beckons with more misadventures, and who knows which toga will end up as history's mockery next. You laugh softly to yourself, swirling into a drifty slumber, picturing Lysander conducting a chorus of confused philosophers while clutching what remains of a half-drunken amphora, both reeling from wild ideas and the realization that philosophy might just be the highest form of hilarity. What an ancient evening this is, burdens lifted, beauty sought, and laughter echoing into the night. And yet, through it all, one question lingers. Was anybody actually here to discuss anything? Or was it all just one long toast to absurdity? You, my friend, have found your answer within the twilight. Chapter 12, Couches and Cauldrons, a Symposium under the Stars. Hey guys, welcome to another mildly interesting escapade into the past, where the couches were decadent, the wine was plenty, and so was the philosophical nonsense. Tonight, we embark on a journey soaked in grape juice and exquisite awkwardness, exploring the peculiar tradition of the ancient Greek Symposium. You know, that glorious gathering where gentlemen reclined on couches, whined about the nature of reality, and sometimes forgot their togas in the most embarrassing ways. But before we dive into the couch fluff, do me a solid. If you enjoy this nighttime romp through history, like, subscribe, and drop a comment, but only if you actually want to. No pressure. We're not trying to be the ancient Greeks here, endlessly seeking validation over urns of wine. Now, dim the lights, crank up that fan, and settle into your own metaphorical couch. Though, let's be real, your living room is probably less luxurious than a stack of luxurious linens supported by a couple of blockheads arguing about metaphysics. Have you ever wondered how, upon arriving at such a soiree, you'd be greeted not by a lavish charcuterie board, but a random dude reciting poetry about the shadows cast by his cat. Or perhaps how you'd navigate the fine line between super intelligent conversation and the urge to stuff your face with honey-drenched figs. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 400 BC at a symposium filled with dramatic philosophizers and an elite guest list that would make modern influencers drool. Picture this: a room dimly lit by flickering oil lamps, couches arranged in a precise circle, glowing softly, like a firefly swarm that's misplaced its GPS. The air smells of fermented grapes, sweat, and the lingering scent of that questionable cheese you're embarrassed to admit you shared last week in some crowded tavern. As the night unfolds, you notice the couches. Oh, those glorious couches. They are more than mere furnishings. They are the castles of the subtle art of lounging. Each guest settles into their spot as if merging into a living puzzle, slipping into the crevices of cushions, so plush they might just swallow you whole. Here, comfort dances with danger. One too many sips of wine, and you might end up trapped in a historic game of who can recline the most dramatically without falling off. Already, you can practically hear the hushed chuckles as someone teeters dangerously to one side. The ambience is alive with the tones of laughter and occasional shouting as folks gnaw on seasoned figs that seem to look back at you with their beady little seeds. Ever wondered whether figs are just nature's attempts at hypnotizing you into hearing more of that poetry? Between bites, philosophical dilemmas are tossed around like salad. Never mind what kind of dressing they were initially thrown in. What is love? Someone bellows, and before you know it, everyone's nodding in intense agreement, possibly pondering whether they should just let this moment breathe, or ask when the next round of wine arrives. But hold on, there's more. The cacophony of ideas bursts like a particularly rambunctious grape as Lysander, our equivocating philosopher, takes another swig and resumes his aerial yoga routine on the couch. Picture it. He's gesticulating wildly, explaining love and beauty, while wrestling with the gravity of his half-empty amphora. Hilarity ensues as he shoots a glance at the heavens, perhaps wondering if the gods could intervene to save him from the embarrassment of spilling red wine all over his toga. Again. While some lauded thinkers might argue that love is like a warm blanket on a cold winter's night, others insist it's more akin to the lingering scent of a goat, intensely personal, yet unmistakably awkward. Ah, but isn't that what makes it profound? You can hear someone barrel on in the background, mumbling fervently, more into his rhetoric than the latest dessert dish being passed around. And speaking of dishes, amidst the philosophical shenanigans lies the true star of the evening, the appetizers. A rotating platter of figs, nuts, and seafood, complete with the occasional crumbled bread that feels more like a brick than a bite. You ponder, is this how ancient Greeks defined snack goals? As you try to pick up a piece of bread, only to realize it's stoically stuck to the table, you can't help but think, where's the cosmic humor in starving to nibble on something that could just as easily be a prehistoric artifact? Back to the couches, where every guest enjoying the good life is also grappling with a minor existential crisis. What if we're all just energy, one philosopher nervously interjects, to which someone else quips, "Sure, keep telling yourself that as you consume these communal figs, my friend." Imagine sitting there, trying to join the debate, all while suppressing the pressure building in your stomach from sampling just a tad too much of that questionable cheese. Your thoughts race as you overhear snippets of meta-philosophical conversation. Are we really here? Or is this all just an illusion? You can't help but think, dude, if this is an illusion, please let me be dreaming in a place with better snacks. As the night wears on, philosophies swirl like the remnants of a wine cask, emptied far too soon. Laughter punctuates the air, puncturing the seriousness, reminding you that life, even back then, was a delightful comedy waiting to unfold. The symposia of the world seem but a series of misunderstandings, garnished with flowing wine, a swirling maelstrom of ideas, chaotic to the untrained eye, but slapstick poetry to those who dare to recline into absurdity. So as you let this tapestry of hilarity tuck you into slumber, take solace in the knowledge that being surrounded by passionate philosophers and awkward couch dynamics is not unlike navigating your own friends' late-night musings, complete with all the charm and clumsiness that defines both ancient and modern gatherings. Because really, wherever we gather to chat, whether over wine or water, the real philosophy is simply finding joy in the chaos of humanity. Sleep well, dear friend, and may your dreams carry the echoes of laughter from ages past. Chapter 13. Debates and Diluted Wine. The Art of Philosophical Nonsense. Ah, the Symposium, those ancient gatherings where the wine flowed like an overzealous water fountain, and the conversations were so deep you'd need scuba gear to navigate them. Picture it. You're nestled among cliques of reclining philosophers, surrounded by half-empty cups of diluted wine, trying your best to sound intelligent while your stomach grumbles for more than just squishy figs and olives. You see, attending a symposium during the classical antiquity was like stepping into a lively, squid-infested tangle of ideas. Ever wondered what it would be like to listen to people argue about whether reality exists while trying not to spill wine down your toga? Congratulations, you've just landed in 500 BC, and you are so not ready for this. Amidst the elegantly chaotic scene, the air buzzes with a mix of fermented grape aroma and the awkward tension you can only find when a heated debate erupts in a room full of tipplers. There you are, half nodding as some dude passionately defends the philosophical stance that being is a mere illusion. Meanwhile, the guy next to him is so passionate about defining ethics that you can see the wine slightly spilling over the rim of his cup, because frankly, he's way too animated for his own good. Now let's explore something so epic it'd make your average modern-day dinner party look like child's play. Imagine sinking into those sumptuous cushions, your toga almost dragging you down into the philosophical depths, while those elite gentlemen around you engage in bouts of rhetoric. Is morality absolute? You hear someone muse earnestly, and in response, another chap slurs, morality, more like moronality, pass me the figs. Each small table is like a tryst between grapes and great ideas. But here's the kicker. Everyone acts like they've read all the great works of philosophy, while secretly Googling what Kant means on their tablets of stone. Halfway through the evening, someone mistakes the phrase, "the definition of a good life," for an invitation to a new wine round. Spoiler alert, everyone now has their hands filled with more wine and fewer coherent thoughts. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine someone trying to write a thesis on the essence of beauty after 3 cups of that fine, diluted wine, more artful grape water than actual wine at this point. Your new friend Lysander has managed to spill half of it as he gestures wildly. You can't help but think that if the gods were watching, they'd be chuckling at this beautiful mess of self-proclaimed thinkers. It's like observing a bunch of puppies trying to grasp concepts of quantum mechanics, with roly-poly giggles and near misses on the furniture. As the straws of logic begin to tangle in elegant absurdity, let's not forget the essential sidekick in this historical epic, a plate of questionable anchovies fighting for survival amid the more popular figs and honeyed treats. It's as if the anchovies are self-aware, wondering why they're in a philosophical debate surrounded by people who would almost certainly choose grapes over them. Morality is innately tied to our actions, one philosopher cries, blissfully unaware of the anchovies contemplating their probable demise. Another round of wine arrives, and suddenly you find yourself the unfortunate witness to a philosophical slap fight over whether virtue is better than pizza. Yes, pizza. It seems in this alternate universe, Aristotle has somehow married culinary arts and ethics, leading to dishes bursting with existential flavor. What's next? A debate about the happiness of cats in relation to cheese? Cue the nodding heads and approving clinks of cup against cup. With each sip, moral discussions bounce across the congregation with the precision of an untrained puppy chasing its tail. Love is like trying to catch a butterfly, someone exclaims passionately, and you can't help but picture that same fellow flailing about with wine-stained togas, trying to catch an actual butterfly while forgetting the wine glass in his other hand. Spoiler, he failed. But let's not forget the real masterpiece here, the delicate art of saying profound things after too much diluted wine. Perhaps life is like a grape, one of your companions finally asserts. You squeeze it for essence, and you always end up sticky. Cue roaring laughter, punctuated by a few snorts, all from obvious giggle fits, until someone manages to cork the entire evening by pointing out there's no grape juice left to drink. The irony is hard to ignore, isn't it? Conversations might flow like that half glass of wine you've got left, sometimes dripping, often spilling, and certainly not as profound as you'd like to think. As you slip further into this kaleidoscopic fervor, awash with laughter and philosophical nonsense, realize that being part this chaos is either truly enlightening or just biding your time until you can escape into a quiet corner without questioning the very nature of your existence. So as this spiraling night of clothing-clutching debates and giggling anchovies draws nearer to its delicious, incoherent conclusion, you may marvel at how the tapestry of laughter and drunken moral dilemmas is stitched together in absurdity to form the very essence of what we call connection.
even as the philosophers around you tackle metaphysical questions far beyond the reach of logic. And maybe, just maybe, at the end of it all, it's not about grasping life's profound secrets, but rather simply enjoying the ridiculousness of each half-lit room, decked out in togas, and the absurd possibility that one day you might just find yourself thrillingly trapped in an anchovy-themed philosophical debate. What a beautiful mess of humanity, perfectly cushioned in laughter beneath the stars, now gently ushering you into the embrace of sleep. Chapter 14. Charting the Cosmic Chaos, Life of a Celestial Scholar. Welcome back, dear sleep seekers. Tonight, we're set to drift through the skies, so far above that even your existential dread will feel like a distant speck. We're diving into those ancient celestial diagrams that'd make modern star maps look like kids' drawings after a sugar binge. But wait, ever wondered what it would be like to ponder constellations while sipping wine that may or may not be watered down? Imagine yourself as a classical-era scholar, perched atop a rickety stool that creaks ominously, much like your knees after a long day. You're gazing at an elaborate celestial diagram, one so intricate that even the universe is likely scratching its head. Your colleagues in the background, of course, are making grand claims about the mystical alignment of the stars, while still trying to figure out whether it's nighttime or just a particularly dark tavern. But this brings me to some questions that are ever so pressing for your ancient self, floating right there in 500 BC. How does one actually find out if the stars are aligned? Or is it just a precaution against missing out on an invite to the symposium? If you were to ask the stars for advice, do you think they'd just roll their cosmic eyes and suggest investing in better chart-making skills? And what if that grand constellation you've been tracing actually turned out to be just an overcooked octopus, indelibly stained into your parchment? Ah yes, congratulations! You've just woken up as a scholar in ancient Greece, where the air smells faintly of olive oil, and the only available lighting is from an oil lamp that's flickering more than your faith in humanity. As you squint your eyes to read the stars above, the first thing that strikes you is the sheer scale of confusion laid out before you. You've got circles here, triangles there, and oh, are those little drawings of pigs wrestling? If only you'd grabbed the guidebook titled Celestial Diagrams for Dummies on your last trip to the marketplace, you'd know that the pig wrestlers might just be part of your astrological fate. Too bad all the oracles are busy charging for advice on how to attract a good-looking goat instead. The diagram reflects an epic canvas of constellations, painted with obsessive precision, probably inked by an artist who had one too many cups of, you guessed it, diluted wine. Each star is glimmering like a distant promise, or perhaps just a whim of the cosmos, because let's face it, no one really knows what those stars are thinking. Currently on your mind is how to keep your dignity intact when your fellow scholars decide to debate whether the stars are actually little fireflies in an extravagant celestial circus. And don't even get started on the naming convention for stars in Greek antiquity.
Imagine trying to explain to a friend which star you mean when you can only say, "Oh, it's that one over that there, the one shaped like a spatula." "No, not that one, the other spatula." You can almost hear the echoing laughter of fellow scholars who definitely didn't take you seriously when you drew it in grape juice. Suddenly, alas, your attention shifts and you realize you need a better source of illumination, so you reach for that oil lamp to your side. Of course, using an oil lamp is like trying to read a book in a plot twist. Everything's shadowy and half-formed. Kind of like your love life. The golden glimmer reveals a messy scribble of observations you've made while utterly convinced that you're deciphering the mysteries of the universe. The sound of scholars arguing in the background is almost like a discordant symphony. The stars are just figments of imagination, one insists, while another ardently declares, they are the fiery eyes of the gods watching over us. You can't shake the feeling that amidst all this pondering, they might just be debating which one of them fell off the scholarship wagon first. Ever so relatable. Then, of course, there's the fellow whose head is so far into his scrolls that he's oblivious to the growing clamor around him. "You're not going to believe what I found out about star alignments," he enthusiastically shouts, not paying attention that half the room has already passed out from boredom. It's the ultimate intellectual blackout party. As you try to focus back on your diagram, you can't help but notice you should probably have included a "do not disturb" sign meant for the stars. They might actually be critiquing your diagrams up there, asking which one of you was taking creative liberties with their names. 3 stars for a triangle, 1 star for a pig? Shameful. And let's not forget how you feel each night after contemplating the very fabric of existence while trying to clear your mind of thoughts, only to end up asking yourself if penning down stars is as satisfying as a snuggle with your favorite goat, who, by the way, is probably more aesthetically pleasing than the entire cosmic landscape you're attempting to map. So there you sit, between the celestial mess and the chaos of the Symposium, likelier to draw a map toward emotional distress than any real star chart. Every time you scoff at your creative cosmic pig, remember, in the grand tapestry of the universe, even chaos has a place, often surrounded by a fine vintage of debated meanings and several lingering questions about your life choices. Now, as the laughter rises and the concepts tumble, sink deeper into your scrolling adventure on this starry night, rich with ancient absurdity, as the threads of sanity slowly unravel, leaving you suspended somewhere between figuring out the universe and trying to stay awake. Ah, just another average evening in ancient Greece, leading you ever closer to a peaceful slumber. Tune in next week as we navigate through the wacky world of ancient Greek philosophy, rich wines, conflicting morals, and who brought the dubious anchovies to the discussion. Sweet dreams, celestial scholar, Chapter 15. A Stroll Through Stone-Studded Starlight, the Geometry of an Ancient City. Hey guys, welcome back to another night of history so mildly interesting that you might actually fall asleep before I can finish my first sentence. Tonight, we're diving into a world where the streets were carefully designed to align with the stars, like the universe itself was the world's most ambitious architect.
and the locals were just trying to make it to the bakery without stepping on a goat. Forget luxury. We're talking about a city layout that seemed to have been drawn up by a divine committee armed with compasses, a penchant for geometry, and a bit too much olive oil. But before we take a celestial stroll down these stone streets, let me ask you a few questions. Have you ever tried to navigate a city while simultaneously looking up at the night sky? Maybe even tripping over your own 2 feet? Or how about being so distracted by celestial beauty that you completely forgot about
The amazing sandwich you just spilled all over yourself? And then there's the question of whether you'd remember to thank your ancient city planner when there was a sudden downpour, because nothing says, "I'm a cultured citizen," like graciously accepting rainwater down the back of your tunic. So grab your imaginary sandals and let's get comfortable. Congratulations. You've just woken up to find yourself in a bustling city in ancient Greece, somewhere between 500 BC and 100 AD. The sun is just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the neatly arranged stone streets below. You feel a wave of confusion wash over you, like that one time you tried to assemble IKEA furniture without the instructions. Don't worry, it's just the feeling of stepping into a world where urban planning was driven by astrology and not the need to avoid the neighbor's obnoxiously loud goat. Imagine the air is filled with a delightful combination of freshly baked bread, the occasional whiff of sweat, and maybe a hint of something akin to the cheese that pretty much defines bad life choices. You peer out of your tiny window, if you could call it that, to see a geometric wonderland spread beneath you. The streets curve and angle as if some celestial architect decided that straight lines were simply too ordinary for the likes of us. Let's talk about these stone streets for a moment, shall we? They weren't just paths to get your marketplace wares from point A to point B. No. They were aligned with the positions of the stars and the paths of the rising sun. That's right. Every step you take is calculated with cosmic precision. Adjusting your trajectory is like trying to parallel park with instructions from your non-existent GPS. Of course, this doesn't mean the locals are any better at navigating than we are today. Picture it. You're trotting along, casually following lines laid out centuries before your time, only to be interrupted by a procession of locals arguing over whether that constellation in the sky looks more like a bear or a particularly discontented potato. Spoiler, you're definitely going to need more wine for this conversation. And let's not forget the road to your favorite forum, a hotspot for philosophical debate and, naturally, very questionable snacks. Each corner you turn, you feel the weight of the stars reflecting your indecisiveness. Should you take the straight path, which could lead you to ancient wisdom, or perhaps the roundabout way, where you'll inevitably step into another goat's unfortunate offerings? Life's choices were never so challenging. As you stroll along, the cobblestones feel rough beneath your feet, each one a little slice of history that has probably seen more foot traffic than your average modern-day mall. The gentle hum of market chatter lightens the atmosphere. Companions arguing about the latest tragic poetry, while other vendors scream about their prized figs as if they hold the secrets of the universe in their delectable sweetness. Honestly, figs were probably just a distraction from the philosophical musings that made its way through these streets like an unpredictable wind. And hold the phone. You just crossed paths with a philosopher, deeply engrossed in his own thoughts. He's mumbling about the cosmos and the nature of being. And there you are, trying not to trip over your own thoughts like it's a game of hopscotch gone wrong. Ever tried to engage in a deep conversation about the interconnectedness of all things, while your brain feels like it's trying to break up with you? You absolutely nail it, half an eyebrow raised, like you're contemplating existence itself, while also wondering if you can convince him to share some of that wine hidden in his robe. Suddenly, a plump pigeon descends, landing with a flourish on a nearby statue. The onlookers gasp collectively, as if a minor deity just made a surprise cameo in their daily life. So involved in your stargazing attempts, you accidentally step into an oozy patch of mud. You regain your footing, and just like that, your envy for ancient urban design collides beautifully with good old-fashioned modern clumsiness. It seems the cosmos has a sense of humor, reminding you that even in antiquity, no one was ever entirely graceful. As you ponder a philosophy about whether life imitates art or vice versa, someone brushes by, accidentally nudging you into an oddly shaped fountain, a delightful splash of cold water that jolts you back to reality. Ah, yes, the modern-day equivalent of stepping into a puddle without looking. The water makes splashes that seem to mock you. Oh, there goes the elegant scholar, smashing into the very culture he's supposed to embrace. So here you are, surrounded by star-studded streets and philosophical escapades, balancing the wonders of the cosmos and the charms of humankind. Next time someone tells you about the grandeur of ancient cities, remind them nothing quite beats the experience of colliding with your own uncertainty while treading a path carefully laid out by someone who genuinely wanted to overcomplicate everything. And with that delightful splash of absurdity, the cosmic journey continues. Imagine sinking deeper into slumber, where the wonders of the ancient city blend seamlessly with the gentle humor of the cosmic chaos surrounding you. Tonight, let's savor the ridiculous charm of our ancient ancestors as you drift off into dreamland, fully equipped to navigate the wild streets of your imagination, without the fear of any lurking goats. Chapter 16. The Heartbeat of the City. A Day at the Grand Palace. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another tranquil night of historical tales that are so mildly interesting you might drift off before I can even convince you to dim the lights. Tonight, we're exploring a grand palace at the exact center of an ancient city, like the world's largest heart-shaped locket, just waiting for someone to find a little something sparkly inside. But instead of jewels, you'll find philosophy, wine, and the delightful aroma of sunburnt citizens pretending to know how to dance. Before we wander through the marble halls of this ancient abode, let me ask you, have you ever walked into a place and felt sheer awe,
only to trip and crash into something unexpectedly reminiscent of your last Zoom meeting. Or perhaps you found yourself at a party where you confidently approach a drink table only to discover your social skills are about as advanced as a caveman's. Have you ever sort of forgotten
The reason for your self-invitation and engaged in deep existential thoughts while secretly eyeing the cheese platter? I know I have. So, if you're comfortably nestled somewhere with your imaginary toga wrapped just right and the ambiance set to cozy, let's dive into the historical whirlpool of potential chaos and cheeky escapades. Congratulations, you've just woken up in ancient Greece, somewhere in the thriving heart of the classical age. The Grand Palace rises like a beacon of culture and confusion. Think of it as the ultimate hipster coffee shop, but without the trendy menu options. Instead, expect poetic debates and the occasional goat parade. As you gaze around, the palace is more than just a pile of stones. It's intricately designed, filled with columns that stretch towards the heavens as if desperately reaching for a celestial high five. You can almost hear the stones sing praises to their own architectural magnificence, while you ponder if any of them ever Realized they were destined to be the stairway to awkward phone calls over thousands of years later. The air is a vibrant mix of fragrances, though you might be less charmed by the bouquet of overripe figs mixed with unwashed tunics. Ever tried to mask the follies of humanity with a little incense? Spoiler alert, you end up with what scientists refer to as the fragrance of life. It's comforting and slightly musky, like if your grandparents' attic had a mild identity crisis and decided to open a candle shop. As you wander through the palace, picture yourself stepping into a massive atrium. Sunlight spills through an open roof, illuminating the crisp white walls covered in colorful frescoes that seem to gossip about the lives of those who came before. It's like scrolling through your aunt's vacation photos from her European tour, but each painting tells stories of legendary heroes, lavish feasts, and debates on who would win in a fight, Achilles or an entire flock of very angry pigeons. Now, imagine queuing up outside the Symposium Hall, a grand space where citizens gather for spirited discussions that probably include topics like, is it ethically okay to invite your ex to dinner? And what is the actual deal with olives? You soon realize this isn't just about philosophy. It's essentially the ancient version of the world's most smug TED Talk series. As you finally get let through the entrance, you're struck by the sights and sounds. Tables draped with colorful cloths are laden with platters of charcuterie, bread, and the aforementioned figs, as well as bowls brimming with olives, because, of course, no Greek gathering would be complete without them. The chorus of laughter and debate echoes like an off-key choir, where everyone seems both deeply insightful and just a little tipsy. But let's not forget the renowned Symposium etiquette. Ever tried to sip from a wine cup while simultaneously nodding sagely at someone, discussing the metaphysical implications of cloud shapes? It's like navigating a Zoom call while multitasking with your laundry. It can lead to some spectacular spills. Words flutter around like annoying mosquitoes, buzzing about ethics and the best way to achieve eternal glory, while you're just over here wondering if going for the last fig would make you a lesser human. And what's this? One of the philosophers is talking passionately about justice like he's auditioning for a role in an ancient drama, while another guy, clearly challenged in the personal space department, has taken it upon himself to demonstrate the art of conversation with the profound physicality of a tree sloth caught in an existential crisis. You're left wondering if brilliance always comes with the added bonus of awkward body language. Before you lose track of your thoughts and find yourself embroiled in a wine-drizzled debate about who the actual best philosopher ever was, keep an eye out for the palace guards. Dressed in pristine uniforms, they stand like stoic statues, likely contemplating whether guarding a giant mound of debate is worth missing out on their own symposium adventures. Their serious expressions matter less when you realize they probably just want to snack on the leftover figs and calculate the optimal time to sneak away. Just as you're amazed at how a casual gathering can so quickly turn into the Olympic sport of spirited argument, a boisterous man rises to deliver an impassioned speech, like a modern-day influencer ready to pitch the next great revolution. Something akin to, what if we made parties a mandatory event? Spoiler, laughter ensues. And just like that, in this palace of philosophical whimsy and excessive grape consumption, you find yourself swept away by the whirlwind of history. Life in this vibrant space is a dance between lofty ideas and fleeting moments, beautifully chaotic, yet serenely comforting. The laughter, the spills, and the irrelevant debates create a tapestry of human connection, reminding you that even in the grandest of settings, the quirks and absurdities of life always find a way to shine through. So, as you let these images drift softly into the corners of your mind, keep in mind that even the mightiest of palaces couldn't shield its citizens from the delightful absurdity of human nature. Tonight, let the gentle cadence of ancient chaos lull you into a serene slumber and transport you to your own palace of dreams, where grand debates merge seamlessly with hilariously unexpected flops. A place that feels strangely familiar and wholly absurd. Chapter 17. The Scribe's Canvas of Chaos. Let's talk about the ancient world's version of art, the clay tablet. Imagine, if you will, being a scribe in ancient Greece, or possibly shouting, "Unpaid intern!" at the top of your lungs as you settle into the shadowy corner of a sun-drenched courtyard, clutching a wet slab of clay like it owes you an apology. Your wooden stylus, sharper than your best friend's opinions on your life choices, is your tool of trade, and make no mistake, it isn't for doodling cartoon cats. You sit perched on a slightly uncomfortable stool that resembles a low-budget throne made from leftover lumber and dreams. The world around you is bustling with citizens discussing philosophy while juggling wine cups, and it seems like a fair few are also attempting to balance a goat on their heads. It's an ambitious choice, but you didn't sign up for that. You signed up to turn mud into meaningful scribbles. The sun hits your face, warm and bright, and it feels like all the gods are either giving you a high five or a sunburn. As you press down into the moist clay, it feels like your fingers are creating a masterpiece. or an abstract depiction of your sanity unraveling. With every strike of the stylus, you're commencing a dance between artistry and practicality, crafting a grid of irrigation canals that would make even a modern city planner nod in muted approval, all the while knowing that your next task is jotting down city walls that would rival the sturdiness of a governing body with a perpetual identity crisis. Ever tried to build a sandcastle while your friends are busy making TikToks in the background? That's sort of the vibe here. As you carve out those canals, you're battling the elements, dodging rogue pigeons, and praying to the gods that this grid will one day be the waterworks every ancient inhabitant dreams of, rather than the modern equivalent of a public toilet. Is that a cat? No, it's just a local philosopher, lounging in the shade, pondering the deeper meaning of life, while you're stuck here creating irrigation maps because someone decided you needed a hobby. Why can't I just throw olives at pigeons like everyone else, you think, wishing desperately that your calling involved fewer clay and more snacks? But alas, you're dedicated. Picture this. With every meticulous line engraved into the clay, you're not just sketching out canals. You're setting up a complex irrigation system with more twists and turns than the plot of an ancient tragedy. Indeed, every farmer is counting on you to bring water to their parched fields. No pressure, though. And let's be real, this isn't exactly a stress-free environment. You can almost hear the whispers of future historians debating your life choices. Scribe, more like slave to the clay, they'll say. And somehow, you know they'll all be just a little too smug about it. But the real kicker? Every so often, a merchant struts by, his voice booming as he chants about olive oil prices, and you suddenly can't help but wonder if you should have pursued a different career path, maybe one that involved less manual labor and more olive sampling. You could have been a master oil taster, living an easy life while alternating between rich and extra virgin, blissfully unaware of your scribe friends slaving over canals that might not even get built. As you scratch lines into the clay, the scent of the unseasoned air wafts over you, mingling with that distinct aroma of artisan pottery. You wonder if this is how scented candles got their start. Some hapless scribe wishing for a signature canal mud scent to smell like dreams while stuck drafting maps for civilization. Ever found yourself escaping boredom during a long meeting by doodling? That's sort of the life of an ancient scribe. With every mark, your mind drifts, imagining how splendid life might be if only you could host your own symposium with none of the responsibilities. A dazzling vision erupts, a buffet of figs, plenty of wine, and everyone pretending to know who Aristotle is, while sneaking olives when no one is looking. Now, that's the real civilization building. You pause, delving into your contemplations, until a shadow looms over you, a fellow scribe. He peers down, likely judging the masterpiece unfolding beneath your fingertips. Is this even accurate? He queries, snorting like he's just dug up a buried goat. If the city was this well planned, we wouldn't be arguing over who overwatered the crops last week. The cheek. You almost retort. Grains of wisdom, much like my clay tablets, are often a bit lumpy, but choose instead to divert the discussion into absurdity. Maybe something about how we all know it's the olives that unite the people, not the water. He chuckles, momentarily softened by the thought of an olive-themed utopia. Who wouldn't want to lounge on couches of plush fig leaves while sipping from cups of the finest olive oil? And just like that, you dive back into your work, each line a declaration in this messy, ancient bureaucracy. Sure, all the gods of the cosmos might be focused on grand adventures, but here you are, etching out futures, one irrigation canal at a time, all while fighting the urge to sneak back to the festivities where the olives are plump and the sighs of philosophers sound like the world's least exciting stand-up comedy. As you lay down your stylus, you realize that writing the future, one canal at a time, is both an honor and a surprisingly muddy endeavor. Who knew the ancient world was built on such squishy foundations? But then again, isn't that just life? A series of pivoting plans that flick mud in your face while you're merely trying to scribble your way into history's annals? Ah, the delightful chaos of existence. Chapter 18. The Papyrus Parade of the Peculiar. Ah, but now our journey leads us to the sun-baked banks of the Nile, where the air is thick with history, humidity, and the occasional lingering scent of something that is definitely not on the local menu. You've just awoken in ancient Egypt, circa 500 BC, and let's be clear, you're in for a ride more twisted than a noodle during a food fight. Are you ready to find out why sleeping on a papyrus scroll might seem more appealing than this afterlife adventure? You glance around, taking in the vibrant colors of the bustling marketplace, filled with bartering traders and enthusiastic vendors shouting about the day's catch. Fish that could probably stare back at you with their judgmental little eyes. It's as if you've entered a very ambitious version of a farmer's market, but the produce is far more questionable. Are those eels? Or did someone just accidentally bring their snake? As you step up to the grand temple, a congregation of priests robed in white linen flows around you like a fashion show gone awry. One of them, a particularly grand-looking figure with a beard longer than your last family dinner's awkward silences, beckons you over. Come, learn about the soul's path through the afterlife. It's more complicated than a tax return on a Thursday, he exclaims, unrolling a papyrus scroll that seems to extend for miles, both frightening and bewildering. Picture this. The scroll opens up, revealing a plethora of hieroglyphs so intricate and enchanting that they would make even the most passionate graphic designer weep. Welcome to the journey of the soul, where even the bravest hearts can break a sweat, he declares, throwing his hands up dramatically as if he's about to open for a blockbuster film. You find a comfy spot, and the priest begins to explain the path of your soul, which, spoiler alert, involves more twists and turns than a reality TV plot. The journey begins at the Hall of Judgment, where your heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. You might want to skip dessert, unless you fancy risking a one-way ticket to the land of the dead, he smirks, though the humor doesn't seem to land as well as he imagines. Ever had your blood pressure checked after a particularly chaotic week?
That's what it feels like in the Hall of Judgment. You can almost feel the sweaty palms and the rezoning of hopes and dreams as the scales teeter lightly. If you've spent your life replenishing olives in overly dramatic symposiums and not tiptoeing around a few nobles' homes, then congratulations. Your heart is like a cool breeze on a summer day, ideal for fluttering past that feather. But let's not get too optimistic just yet. Should the scales tip unfavorably, say goodbye to your hopes of lounging on a cloud made of fresh figs, because you're headed towards a giant devourer. The thought that you might find yourself in a delightful conversation with Amit, the monster that gobbles up misbehaving souls, sends a chill down your spine. Kind of like getting blocked on social media, but with slightly more fatal consequences. Yikes, the priest quips, rolling on to the next expansive scroll. As he continues, the scroll reveals various afterlife scenarios. There's a rowdy party hosted by Osiris, where wine flows so liberally you'd think it was the ancient version of a keg stand. A place for free-spirited souls who thrived on earthly entertainment, dropping off positively wild tales. Can you even imagine? And what was your mortal life like? Oh, you know, casual debates over philosophy at night and avocados on toast at breakfast. Totally lived my best life. But for every festive soiree, there's a terrifying moment of navigating the river of the dead, where currents pull you back and forth like indecisive Instagram influencers unsure about their next post. Don't fall in, the priest warns, and you can't help but wonder if the ancient Egyptians ever had a Pinterest board full of how to avoid bad decisions in the afterlife. River currents, leaping crocodiles, and the existential dread of eternal wandering. Oh my. As the papyrus continues unfurling, revealing realms filled with reed huts built from the most questionable materials, and souls attempting their best pyramid impressions through a series of acrobatics, the absurdity of the whole thing hits you. It's like some cosmic mix of a Greek comedy and a piece of performance art gone rogue. Everyone is giggling as they trip over each other amid shows that seem catalogued straight from a dream during a Netflix binge. Meanwhile, the grand priest rolls his eyes dramatically. And in case you thought you'd get a healer along the way, think again. You'll have to rely on your ability to charm a croaking frog for wisdom. Don't let the frog's face fool you. It holds the secrets of the universe. You simply nod, understanding that if you had to depend on a frog for insights, your chances of success might be as slim as convincing your neighbor's cat to care about your presence. So there you sit, semi-comfortably on the sun-baked ground, gazing at the scroll filled with ancient aspirations, where even the plans for the afterlife are more tangled than your last conversation with your banker. Remember to pack your sense of humor and a feather or two for weight spars when your soul makes that fateful leap into eternity. With each turn of the scroll, you realize that this is life, or afterlife to be precise, an intricate mixture of buoyancy, hilarity, and the occasional cameo by a well-situated rabid jackal. As the priest thunders on about golden gates and fields of bliss, you can't help but stifle a laugh at how, likely tens of thousands of years later, people would rather complain about their car radios than fly off into the unknown chaos of the afterlife. A positively relatable point.
Across epochs. Your tongue dry from laughter, and contemplating your choices, you nonchalantly wonder if your future in the afterlife could be improved with the proper branding. Possibly a well-timed merchandise drop of "I survived the judgment." But let's not ruin the vibe as the scroll continues to unwind into the vast landscape of absurdity, where even ancient souls had to agree the path to fervent wisdom might just involve a lot of unfortunate clay and a questionable glow from Paul's glowing "Yours faithfully" somewhere in the vast annals of history. So sleep tight, because your adventure through the pyramids of laughter is far from over. Far. Chapter 19. Mapping Madness in Ancient Greece. Hey guys, welcome back to our journey through mildly interesting history, where we make sense of the past while you try not to snore. Tonight, we're taking a leisurely stroll through the sun-drenched hills of ancient Greece during a time when people thought mathematics was cooler than a summer blockbuster and geometry might just save your life. Yes, we're diving deep into the world of a mythical mathematician armed with nothing but a scroll and a vivid imagination. So, where do we begin? Imagine being at a symposium. No, not the one where your friends debate veganism while sipping lattes. No, this is the "how much wine can you drink before someone starts reciting Plato" kind of symposium. If you think your last happy hour got out of hand, just wait until you hear about this place. Ever found yourself in a situation where your friends are so deep into an intellectual debate that you wish everyone would just switch to karaoke? Join the club. What if I told you that your math teacher was actually the life of the party? Mind-blowing, right? So dim those lights, maybe set your fan to that breezy level that gives you an imaginary Mediterranean vacation, and get comfortable, because congratulations, you've just woken up around 500 BC in Greece, and today you're hanging out with a mathematician who's about to draw a map more confusing than your uncle's travel itinerary. Let's paint the scene. You find yourself amid dust and chatter under the warm Athenian sun. Colorful drapery billows in the gentle breeze, and somewhere in the distance, a goat bleats disapprovingly at the whole notion of philosophy. Ah, the rich tapestry of life as you stroll through the agora, taking in the sights, the sounds, and the smell of lunch, grilled fish that probably swam past you in the market just a few hours ago. But even the freshest fish can't compete with the aroma of someone's unusual lunch choice. A delightful mix of fermented olives and something that might just be meat leftovers from last week. Bon appetit. Now, human civilization was a tad different back then. You're encouraged to spend your day discussing serious topics like the nature of existence, or how to explain why your shoes have more holes than actual shoes. But all the while, the mathematician, a gifted soul named Pythagoras,
and yes, he's the one with the triangle, is hard at work trying to create a map of the world using geometric shapes that would make even modern cartographers raise an eyebrow. Let's talk about this for a second. Here's a guy sitting on a stone bench, like it's a bench at your local cafe, armed with parchment that probably cost more than your entire month's worth of takeouts. Picture him casually sketching out a world clock that looks less like a clock and more like your grandmother's knitting attempt gone wrong. Using various geometric shapes, he's concocting a map so intricate it could serve as a puzzle for generations, even though we all know half of mankind would just get distracted by finding the nearest tavern on it. And as he works, he mutters, probably something like, "If it doesn't fit, I'll just depict it as a hexagon. No one will question it." The determination is palpable, and the amount of chalk dust and fervent hand gestures draws the attention of curious, awkward onlookers. You can't help but chuckle at the realization that folks back then had these spirited discussions about the shape of the earth, while you struggle with the shape of your own bed after a long, chaotic day. Is the world flat or round? One person echoes with the conviction of someone trying to explain how they absolutely nailed their taxes this year. "Oh, it's round," insists another, as if this were a thrilling episode of a reality TV show. I mean, have you ever seen a flat sea? They remind you a lot of those heated debates over pizza toppings, just without the appealing aroma of melting cheese and pepperoni. And don't get me started on the tools of their trade: parchments, rulers made from reeds, and ink that probably consisted of more mystery ingredients than your brunch smoothie. Imagine him dipping a quill into a bottle of something so murky you think your cat might fetch a few ideas out of it. And then he's off drawing lines and angles as if he's trying to connect the dots of his long-suffering love life. Ah, and here's where I lost my sanity. Pythagoras draws up triangles with a mix of fervor and existential dread. If only he had known that centuries later, people would argue over getting the right angle on Instagram instead of in geometry. The pressure is on, and yet you can't help but imagine him thinking, if people want a map, I'll give them a workout trying to find their way. As the sun begins to set, casting a warm golden hue over the proceedings, you suddenly realize the absurdity of it all. While Pythagoras sketches fervently, you contemplate the grand scheme of chaos, each line drawn like a scroll of fate, connecting not just places, but the whims and desires of humanity that would end up being lost in the sands of time. If only he knew about Google Maps. Wouldn't that just ruin all this fun? But as the symposium goes on, we know there's a limit to how much geometry can keep the guests entertained before someone reverts back to debates over wine preferences and the dubiousness of a well-cooked sheep. Pythagoras, though sweating under the pressure, earns his space in the sun, leaving behind a legacy of shapes and theories that even a modern-day mathematician would tip their hat to. So you sit back, drink in the laughter, the chaos, and the thrill of a world built not just on facts, but, let's face it, on the humor of human connection. Because, at the end of the day,
Whether you're mapping out the cosmos or simply trying to find the way to your cozy bed, humor will always be your sturdiest companion. Now, as the stars gather and the evening paints its calming hues, prepare to drift off. You're headed straight into tomorrow's exploration, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Remember, enjoy the absurdity of the journey, stay curious, and know that charts and laughter might be the only guides you need. Sweet dreams, sweet. Chapter 20. Marching like Romans, but without the snacks. Hey guys, welcome back to our not-so-silent exploration of history, where we find the faint sounds of your snoring and the echoes of ancient laughter. Tonight, we're diving into the life of Roman soldiers marching along a straight stone road that stretches to the distant horizon, a scene more iconic than your uncle showing off his vacation slides. Picture it, mighty legions on the move, togas flapping in the breeze, and you right there with them, but only for the sensory experience. Now, let's get real for a moment. Have you ever found yourself standing in line for a concert, wondering why on earth you didn't pack a snack? Did I pack enough beef jerky? You ponder, surveying the line like it's a battle formation. What if I told you that marching alongside a Roman soldier might feel remarkably similar, minus the tunics and slightly more vinegar in your drinks? Would they trade their swords for string cheese if given half a chance? And what about those sandals? Did they ever find a decent pair, or was it all about style over comfort? So dim those lights, perhaps clasp a reassuring teddy bear, and get cozy, because congratulations, you've just woken up in ancient Rome around 50 BC. You're standing on a meticulously crafted Via Appia, where everything is either a stone slab or a legionnaire's flexing muscles. The sun is high in the sky, casting warm rays that bounce off the polished armor encasing strong, albeit slightly sweating, figures beside you. The road stretches ahead like that endless queue you dread to stand in at the DMV. Oh, and the scent. Imagine a potpourri of sandalwood, grilled meat, and, well, slightly less pleasant aromas wafting from some of the soldiers in front of you like a mobile summer festival, but without any of the fun. Nice, right? Now, as these Roman soldiers march, let's take a moment to consider what life on the road means for them. You think your commute's rough? Well, try being a Roman soldier. They didn't just trot off in their fanciest sandals. No, they had to haul around about 70 pounds of gear, spare parts, and maybe other soldiers' bad jokes. If you were hoping for midday snack breaks, think again. Those guys weren't planning on snacking on artisanal cheese platters. Fresh bread? Please. Their idea of gourmet was day-old hardtack, more like a stone than a snack. And forget about straying too far from the troop. One soldier gulps down water from a stream, while another throws him the side eye, likely saying, "You should have brought a portable water bottle." Not to mention, if a soldier dared to lag behind for even a moment, they'd probably be devoured by wild boars, or, worse, have to engage in conversation with a centurion about discipline. The horror. Vivid images come to mind as you imagine their camaraderie. They march to the beat of a drum, but the rhythm isn't entirely military precision. Oh no, between the jingle of armor, the clash of sandals, and spirited, albeit fatigue-induced banter. You're treated to a symphony of "Woe is me" and "I thought we were going to stop at Pompeii." But please, save the dramatic fall to the ground for when you're actually out of breath. No one wants to be that soldier. Are we talking sturdy men, or a parade of grumpy gladiators longing for a siesta? You can bet your toga that some of these guys are daydreaming about the last home-cooked meal they had, likely consisting of what may be best described as peasant fare. They're contemplating how the next wine party is going, all while navigating the slightly rocky terrain as if it were an Olympic-level obstacle course. Their marched out-of-breath banter is as enlightening as, "We're out of wine already." But lo, the horizon doesn't just stretch, it teases. Is it a mirage, or is there an adorable little tavern just ahead? Now, don't be fooled. While the enthusiastic idea of plying their weary selves with food and drink beckons, the reality is that when they arrive, all they'll find are updated marching orders and more heavy burden to shoulder. Another day, another battle. But first, let's all look disheveled in unison. Marching like Roman soldiers isn't just about the sweat and hardtack. It's an existential crisis wrapped in armor. Dignity? Ha! They powered through rallies, sweat like it was life's purpose, and engaged in long, pointless debates while atop this stony mall of a great empire. When you're out there under the sun, it's less about Shakespeare and more about, "So the guy in front of me totally did not see that rock." Just think of how wild it would be to gather some friends for an outing like this. Hey guys, let's all hike for miles, have minimal personal space, and endure endless drumming while attempting to avoid tripping over loose rocks. Sign me up for the historical experience, right? The torturous beauty of this camaraderie lies somewhere in the sweat-soaked togas that cling like they've forged a lifelong bond through military perspiration. They say nothing brings soldiers together like the fear of stumbling over one another. And as the soldiers continue their march, we see the very essence of Roman life reflected back. Sweat, laughs, food deprivation, and the ever-present desire for a little taste of freedom on a very turbulent road to destiny. Let us continue this journey, because, let's be real, it doesn't just end here. Who knew marching could have such a rich texture of discomfort and absurdity? So, now as we ease back, prepare to drift into the gentle night where marching feet and grumpy soldiers become part of the harmony of dreams. What awaits as we roll deeper into history's embrace? Stay tuned, my dear marchers. Sweet dreams await just around the bend. Chapter 21. Navigating Life with Sticks and Shells. Hey guys, welcome back to our little adventure where sleep meets the zany side of history, like two old friends who can't agree on a movie, yet somehow end up binging all night. Tonight, we take a leisurely sail into the crystal clear waters of the Polynesian Islands. And let me tell you, it's more mesmerizing than that time you learned how to make sushi at home and ended up with rice stuck in your hair. Now picture this. You've just awoken on an ancient Polynesian island, somewhere around 500 BC to 100 AD, surrounded by palm trees, swaying as if they were trying to dance.
But before you get too comfortable, let's play a little game of Would You Rather? Would you rather navigate the ocean with the terrifying thought that you might end up face to face with a shark? Or get stung by a dozen jellyfish while trying to look cool at a beach party? Did you even bring sunscreen? Or will you end up looking like a boiled lobster by
the time you head back? While you contemplate your choices, let's dive deeper into the life of a Polynesian navigator. Picture it. You're holding a map, not made of parchment, but of sticks and shells, awkwardly attempting to decipher the movements of invisible ocean waves, while your friends are debating whether the tikis really do come alive at night. Fancy a challenge? It's like trying to find your way back from an IKEA store without any of the arrows or charming little signs that magically appear when you're lost. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the golden age of Polynesian navigation, sharing the sky with stars that seem to wink knowingly at your clumsy attempts at seamanship. The first thing to hit you is the scent of salty ocean air mixed with a hint of coconut. Pure paradise. But it's hard to relish when your homemade map looks more like a craft project gone wrong than an actual navigational tool. Let's talk about that map. Ah, yes, the delicate craftsmanship of ancient Polynesians. They designed a series of stick diagrams and shells representing various tides and currents. If you think that reading a GPS can be confusing when the voice goes rogue and starts giving you the scenic route, imagine trying to guess which direction the waves are moving while a seagull squawks in your ear about lunch. Honestly, it's less of a navigation tool and more of an abstract art installation. Just when you think you've got it down, the wind tries to tell you otherwise, specifically with its way of changing what north truly means. Talk about a dramatic plot twist. But back on the island, you discover that there's no time to relax. Ever tried to charm the ocean like it's a hostile ex? You've got to understand tides that shift more often than your aunt switches stories about her wild youth. How do you keep track of these slippery currents? Why, you do it with the classic combination of seashells and wooden sticks, as if nature was waiting for you to throw tantrums and dub it artistic inspiration. Try navigating in just a canoe with no seatbelt while fending off boisterous waves that seem intent on stage diving at any moment. Did I mention your companions? They're sitting comfortably, half snoozing, while you're fighting for the very essence of ocean survival. Shouldn't a vacation involve sunbathing? You thought you'd be sipping coconut water while lounging under a palm tree, not wrestling with water like it's a giant slippery eel on a Tuesday. Let's not forget the charm of these explorers who angle their bodies toward the sun, not just for warmth, but also for directional guidance. It's like using a solar-powered phone, only they weren't checking social media. They were remapping their lives. Ever tried it? Standing on a beach with the sun in your eyes, desperately trying to avoid squinting, while simultaneously deciding if that cloud looks like Uncle Bob? And while you're out there, the sights and sounds are a beautiful backdrop, aside from the constant shouting of, "He's lost! Not again!" As your crew tries to keep their sea legs steady, you might hear dolphins giggle as they swim past, and if frustration didn't set in, they would remind you of playful children trying to grab their sibling's ice cream cone without anyone noticing. You're basically an oversized toddler at sea, only instead of a life jacket, you're clinging to a boat made of palm fronds and impossible dreams. But alas, after all this, you finally set your gaze on an island resting on the horizon like a mirage. Your journey is almost complete. You could just about hear the cries of triumphant birds celebrating your arrival. If only they knew how much they were amplifying your concern about misreading those oceanic charts. As you finally ease onto the beach, crumbling like an ancient cookie in the face of gravity, you realize one thing. Being a navigator isn't as glamorous as it sounds. You've dodged waves, discussed theoretical ocean physics with fish, and somehow survived all the chaos like some adventurous version of Pinocchio, minus the wooden nose, of course. Life may not always be perfect, but neither is navigating the vastness of the great Pacific with nothing but sticks and shells to guide you. However, just like every great adventure, it leads to delightful memories, and possibly slightly more than a few sea urchin stings. Now, as you let the rhythmic sound of the waves and an evening breeze escort you into slumber, thank your nautical stars that you'll never again have to unpack that map of confusion. Sweet dreams await out on the vast sea of your imagination. Rest easy, sailor. Chapter 22. Into the dark woods of mythical mayhem. Hey guys, welcome back to our journey, where the only thing spookier than your last online date is the history we're about to dive into. Tonight, we're taking a stroll through a dark forest on an old map, a place so mysterious and mythical that even your smartphone would throw its hands up in despair. It's like trying to locate your keys after a night of ripped pizza and bad karaoke. Confusing, absurd, and possibly involving mythical beasts that might have stared too long at the wrong side of the twilight. As you settle in for this journey, I invite you to dim the lights, put on a fan, and find that perfect spot on the couch or bed that your back has only ever dreamt about. Imagine those gnarled trees whistling your name, beckoning you into a world where every rustle could mean either a fearsome beast or just a squirrel practicing its stand-up routine. It's a tough choice, really. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to meet a centaur and figuring out how to politely ask if they know where the nearest burrito place is? Or to stumble upon a golden goose and wonder whether it's worth trading your lunch money for a chance at the golden egg they lay? And let's not forget the delightful paradox of attending an ancient symposium where your card for entry is actually getting drunk and debating philosophy, fully embracing your inner Aristotle, while simultaneously having to dodge your neighbor's goat. Congratulations! You've just woken up in classical antiquity, somewhere between 500 BC and 100 AD, in a forest that would put the grim tales of any bedtime story to shame. Let's describe this place. It's dark, dense, and smells faintly of damp earth and ancient magic. Or maybe that's just the remnants of last week's blog post on what not to cook over an open fire. The trees loom over you like hard-nosed guardians of knowledge and snacks, their gnarled branches stretching out as though they're eager for a gossip session filled with mischief and misplaced puns. Now picture this. You're standing there, surrounded by colossal trees that seem to have taken growing old gracefully to a whole new twisted level. Their bark is ancient and wrinkled, much like the wise old man who always sits at the corner of the tavern, straightening everyone out on the true valiant adventures that never quite happened. Some trees even seem to hide mythical creatures in their shadows, like haggard fauns brushing up on their poetry skills, or woeful wraiths practicing their most haunting expressions for an upcoming audition. What's that rustling? Is it the sound of a discreet fairy costume party happening behind those roots? Or a clutch of giggling forest sprites who just heard the one about human existence? It's hard to tell, but the ambiance certainly beguiles you into wondering if you're often the punchline in some ethereal joke. What's the difference between a human and a centaur? Honestly, it seems like you'd be making the punchline up in real time. The air is thick with the kind of suspense that might lead you to a surprise visits from mythical beasts who have had too many nectar cocktails. You can almost hear the faint echoes of mad philosophers debating the merits of existence in the background, their fiery rants punctuated by the occasional snort of a drunken satyr trying to woo a bemused nymph. If only your life had such plot twists, like accidentally joining a troupe of ancient comedians only to realize your punchline about laundry may not exactly resonate with those who wear togas. Speaking of togas, have you ever tried navigating through a dense forest while weighed down by layers of fabric that could serve as a makeshift tent? Elegant and comforting as a council of gods may sound, it's likely to trip you flat on your face when you're trying to run from a mythological creature that looked way cooler on the cave wall drawings than in reality. The eerie sounds. Step softly, because everything around you seems hyper-aware of your presence. Hoofbeats that echo too closely could very well belong to a wild unicorn. Or perhaps it's just an overzealous deer auditioning for a fairy tale. Attempting to remain stealthy in the forest is like trying to blend in at a high school reunion while simultaneously being the only one wearing a dinosaur costume. It's cute in theory, but everyone is still staring. Wait, is that a whisper? Definitely something ancient, breathing the ambiance, thick with history, and maybe a hint of desperation. You cautiously tread deeper, half expecting to find yourself in a scenario where every tree might open their mouths and debate who invented cheese first. You could practically feel the tree's bark going full Shakespearean. To brie or not to brie, that is the question. The very air feels charged with forgotten lore and whimsical nonsense, all bundled together like yesterday's leftovers, somehow sparked a vision for an impromptu saga of surreal proportions. You see, the real trick here is accepting that losing yourself is basically a rite of passage. These woods are not meant for the faint-hearted, or those prone to allergies for that matter. If the scent of pine, mixed with an undercurrent of mystery, doesn't get to you, the fact that every shadow could be the one that turns into an ancient warrior, or
someone desperately seeking directions to the nearest grocery store might just do the trick. And speaking of ancient warriors, if only they knew how hard it was to battle forest sprites while also managing life's day-to-day trivialities, like remembering a friend's birthday while trying not to trip over tree roots. It's a paradox of epic proportions, and quite frankly, that's the kind of chaos that makes life wonderfully absurd and infinitely entertaining. So, as you wander deeper into this enchanted mess of foliage and whimsy,
protect your snacks, put on your best face, and remember, nothing says bravery quite like awkwardly navigating the intersection of reality and myth as if you're at a grocery store staring at a coupon shelf. Because amidst all the chaos of trees and half-spoken legends, you might find that the greatest adventure is just around the bend, or maybe just the one you conjured when you thought all those late-night snack quests were going unnoticed. As the whispers of the ancient forest serenade you into a blissful lull, surrender to the quirkiness of it all. Embrace the absurdity and rest easy, knowing that, much like these tangled tales of fearsome beasts and wise trees, your dreams may just be steeped in delightful weirdness. And isn't that the best way to end the day? Chapter 23, The Temple Towers Overall. Hey guys, welcome back to our journey, where tonight we wade knee-deep into the hilarity of ancient Greece. Get ready to explore a world where a good philosophy debate often ended with someone slipping on a grape, while you wondered why your last date seemed to take that long to agree on what to eat. It's absolutely wild. But before we kick off this comedic tour of bewildering rituals, I must remind you to hit that like button, subscribe, and comment, if you actually enjoy this, of course. No pressure, just a gentle nudge, like your cat when it wants food. Now, find that comfy spot on the couch or bed, the kind of place where the pillows cradle your head like a gloriously soft cloud of cotton candy. Dim the lights, turn on a fan if you feel like channeling a Mediterranean breeze that's infinitely more appealing than the office air conditioning that feels like it was designed by a pouting snowman. Close those eyes and let me transport you to the heart of classical antiquity. You might be asking yourself, what did it feel like to attend a Greek symposium? Was it basically one giant toga-wearing frat party, minus the keg stands? Or did philosophers secretly throw in their 2 cents for how many olives you should have on your plate? Also, how many speeches about virtue can one person endure before wishing for a snack break? Spoiler, one too many. Imagine figuring out how to balance drinking wine while contemplating the meaning of life. Sounds like a recipe for a spectacularly embarrassing stumble off the philosophical stage, doesn't it? Congratulations! You've just woken up in ancient Greece, somewhere between 500 BC and 100 AD. Picture yourself standing in a bustling agora, where the air is thick with the scent of perfumes, fresh bread, and possibly too many unfiltered opinions. Towering above it all, behold,
a sacred temple, so grand that it practically shouts, "Look at me! I'm more important than your
neighbor's goat." This temple isn't merely a building. It looms majestically like a giant white marble cupcake with a cherry on top. I mean, what's not to love? Feel that tingle of reverence? That's the unmistakable vibe of myths and deities floating through the air like confetti at a particularly enthusiastic wedding reception. Imagine a historian painstakingly drawing a map, creating the illusion of this temple being so massive that it dwarfs those surrounding mountains. I have to wonder, were they measuring spiritual significance in dimensions, or just trying to impress their friends at the local symposium? As you step closer, the echoes of debates drift like the aroma of sizzling olives. You can hear the philosophers passionately arguing biographical concepts like, is it better to be a rich fool or a poor sage? And did that last goat really justify a 2-hour discussion? The locals approach the temple, shuffling like children who can't quite choose between cake and ice cream, glancing upside down at this glorious structure, pondering if their lives could be similarly, grandly overwhelming. Oh, how the debates unfold. Patrons cluster like bees around honey, waxen amphorae of wine, flowing as freely as the often overblown rhetoric. Let's be honest, who doesn't love a good cerebral battle over how many metaphors it takes to explain existence? It's practically an Olympic sport of intellect. But if you thought spirited meant anything close to a riotous good time, then hold on to your tunic, because word on the street is that a night at the symposium often ends with newfound resolve, or simply resolved to take a nap right there on the table, draped across the remnants of half-eaten figs and pomegranate seeds. The participants lounge on plush cushions that feel suspiciously like they were designed by a goat committee. Combine this with wine-induced bravado, and you've got a cocktail of chaos. What would it be like to see someone grappling with how to formulate complex thoughts while doing their best to stand upright? I mean, sure, Plato was a smart guy, but could he master arm wrestling while explaining the forms? That's what I'd call a true test of both mind and muscle. Much tougher than any philosophy paper. Now imagine yourself taking the stage, one beer too many, and suddenly you're passionately arguing how the universe might be feelings in the medium of olive oil. The raucous laughter rings out amidst the echoes of deep philosophical ponderings. You're trying your hardest to remember what you read in Aristotle's noodle theory. But alas, what was once profound now slips from your grasp like that one grape you never managed to catch in the Symposium party trick. But let us not forget the practicalities. While you're debating the meaning of life, the real issue would be navigating your tunic in and out of those cushions. Have you ever tried to peel yourself off while simultaneously balancing a plate of olives? It's not for the faint of heart. If anything exemplifies the absurdity of ancient Greek life, it's that every time someone attempted to give an insightful Zen-like explanation of the cosmos, they just ended up looking like they were trying to claw their way back to consciousness after a particularly heavy night of symposium festivities. And when all is said and done, those fortunate enough to sleep beneath the sacred temple's watchful gaze may find themselves dreaming blissfully of the debates raging just outside. Who knew that some of the most influential thinkers were partied with as much vigor as a wedding reception gone rogue? These were individuals weighing profound concepts while attempting to balance a platter of meze on one knee, as if trying to apply Socratic irony to the very act of snacking. So bask in the absurdity of this grand time in history, and allow the echoes of pithy arguments and philosophical slurs to guide you gently into some sleep. Because, as we now understand in the funniest, most bizarre way, sometimes the greatest discussions are framed by a perfectly imperfect failure to keep your wine glass upright. And if ordinary life can be this quirky, perhaps your dreams will be enchanted by their wonderful chaos too. As you drift off, remember the lesson of the temple. It may be towering and magnificent, but it's the joyful, silly moments spent under its influence that create lasting memories. Like stubbornly spilling wine everywhere and wondering when exactly eating 3 servings of olives became an acceptable way to win an argument. Chapter 24. A Celestial Map of Mishaps. Hey guys, welcome back to our journey through history, where today we'll map out something more tangled than your headphones after a trip to the gym. The hilariously chaotic constellation of life and philosophy in ancient Greece. Get comfy, because, let's be honest, navigating the skies is just as tricky as dodging questions from your in-laws about when you're going to settle down. But before we launch into this cosmic adventure, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and, if you enjoy yourself, drop a comment. No pressure, of course. This isn't a symposium where you have to justify your every thought. So, dim the lights, adjust that fan to create a smattering of Mediterranean magic, and settle down like a couch potato on a Saturday afternoon. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to share intimate discussions with scholars while simultaneously trying not to step on a grape and faceplant into a platter of olives? Or how about debating the essence of existence while seriously contemplating snack options, just like you do during those long meetings that drag on longer than a Netflix series? And let's not forget the inevitable shenanigans waiting to ensue at a symposium, the ancient Greek version of a late-night talk show, but with more wine and fewer catchy musical numbers. Congratulations, you've just woken up sometime around 500 BC, standing in a bustling agora in Athens, surrounded by the scents of rich olive oil and sandalwood, and the constant murmur of debates. Picture it, you in a perfectly draped toga, embodying the pinnacle of ancient Greek fashion, which really is just a fancy way of saying behind the times. But trust me, this isn't your average toga party. Instead of cold pizza and warm beer, think of amphorae filled with wine, packed cheekily in the hands of less than sober philosophers. The very air vibrates with the excitement of intellectual discourses, sometimes on the verge of lunacy, much like that one friend who insists on discussing existentialism over breakfast. Now, let's talk about the stars,
Not the glitzy Hollywood types, but the twinkling lights above that ancient skyline. Ever looked up at the night sky and thought, wow, there's something profound in all that, only to have your friend struggle to find the Big Dipper while holding a wine jug? Yep, that's exactly what's happening here. The Greeks believed that the alignment of stars didn't just dictate voyages. It set the stage for every grand debate under the sun, implying that your fate was somehow sewn into the celestial fabric. So here you are, grappling with the stars while probably wondering if it's rude to suggest a second round of wine after someone dramatically declares the cosmos is all about balance. Let's set the scene. You're sprawled on a cushion that feels softer than a goat's beard, surrounded by your fellow symposium goers, all of them equally perplexed by how to build a philosophical fortress while attempting to stay upright without spilling a drop of wine. Everyone has their favorite star up there, much like modern-day fans have their favorite singers. "Ah, look, it's Orion!" one shouts, gesturing wildly, almost throwing their wine everywhere in the process. This symbolizes strength. Meanwhile, you quietly wonder whether the wine is actually managing to inspire any strength, or if it's just fueling more thoughts like, could olives be considered the modern-day philosopher's stone? As the conversation flows, the realities of ancient life come flooding in. Picture this: a midnight discourse on who deserves to be named the philosopher of the year, held while attempting to juggle a plate of appetizers like a circus performer trying not to drop their final chance at stardom. And don't think about letting those olives roll too far, or you'll be faced with the barbaric act of doing some sort of clumsy squat to retrieve them. Clearly, a workout routine better suited for a gym than a philosophical debate. The stars above twinkle mischievously, almost laughing down at you as you attempt to straddle the realms between profound thought and sumptuous snacks. Great. Now we're discussing fate, destiny, and the mythology of the universe while I'm trying to remember if I ate too many figs, you think, as you carefully sample the best of Greece's produce. But let's be real for a second. How ironic is it that the very symbols of guidance, constellations, often lead to being thoroughly lost in the hilarity of ancient discourse? Ever had that moment when you're earnestly trying to understand how to create harmony within the universe, but then suddenly realize you've been nodding along while totally zoning in and out, like one of those can't keep your eyes open faces concocted after an exhausting day at work? It often leads to colorful exchanges. Are we drinking to celebrate wisdom, or merely to drown our sorrows? One ponderously proposes. This question hangs in the air like a questionable grape on a vine, waiting for someone to pluck it. The whispers of agreement ripple through the crowd. Both, someone else crows, a little too enthusiastically for midnight philosophy, especially when the olives are on my plate. And somewhere, high above, the constellations look down, perhaps with a hint of sympathy, as clumsy philosophers fumble through the cosmos. Yet, that's the beauty of it all. In a world filled with profound questions, sometimes the most significant lesson is simply to appreciate the chaos beneath the stars. So as we float through these whimsical thoughts of yesteryear, take a moment to chuckle at the delightful absurdity of ancient life, a time when the interplay between destiny, intellect,
and fruit-based appetizers created bonds as rich as the wine itself. You find solace in knowing that while ancient Greeks debated until the sun peaked up on the horizon, the real stars of this symposium were the little moments you can't help but laugh about, even if they were slightly less epic and a whole lot more slippery than the grand philosophers would ever admit. Chapter 25: Chiseled Coasts and Unruly Youth. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're taking a trip so unfiltered it might just give your latest Instagram post a run for its money. We'll be diving deep into the world of ancient Greek symposiums, where intellectualism met slightly drunken debauchery. Picture lesser-known philosophers arguing over the merits of figs while juggling goblets of wine. Definitely a recipe for disaster, and possibly a viral TikTok. But before we dive headfirst into the chaos, please do us a solid and hit that like button, subscribe, and share your inebriated history stories in the comments below. Only if you genuinely enjoy this, of course. So, dim those lights, let the warm breeze flow in like you're living on the shores of an Aegean island, and find a cozy spot, one not obstructed by pets or rogue game controllers. Let's talk about how you'd definitely crash and burn if you ever found yourself at one of these gatherings. Have you ever wondered what it's like to stroll into a banquet where table manners are merely suggestions? Imagine trying to hold a grown-up conversation while a toddler, a very intoxicated toddler, debates the meaning of existence using nothing more than grape skins and olive pits. How do you politely decline your one cousin's deep-fried olives of woe, served with a side of philosophical bitterness, without igniting an ancient feud? Congratulations, you've managed to wake up in Athens, somewhere between 500 BC and 100 AD, in a sun-soaked agora, filled with the sound of hurried sandals and spirited debates. As you take in this vibrant, chaotic world, you notice an elder teacher gesturing towards a majestic stone carving of a rugged coastline. The carving looks like it had been chiseled not just by skilled hands, but possibly by a committee of hilariously uninformed sculptors who might have drunk too much wine before setting to work. Behold, the teacher bellows with a gusto usually reserved for announcing a celebrity sighting. This coastline, it reflects the tumult of human existence, or at least the inability of sailors to navigate their way home. He gestures animatedly, causing a group of children to look up with wide eyes, as if they were witnessing the birth of pizza. Do you see how the waves crash with so much fervor? It's the passion of our best philosophers grappling with the weight of existence, or simply the sheer chaos of their last symposium, where discussions spiraled out of control like a wild faction of drunken cats. As you settle between these children, you take in the scenery. Their innocent gazes dart unevenly between you and the grand coastline, much like how you might flit your eyes between a gourmet cheese platter and your friend's increasingly sad attempts at a deep discussion about life. The salty sea breeze tickles your senses, blending with the aroma of olive oil and spiced meats wafting from nearby street vendors. Suddenly, you wonder if you'll soon find yourself facing more serious life decisions, like whether prioritizing olive oil over grape juice is truly a matter of intellectual superiority. The teacher continues, leaning closer to the intricately carved coastline. This stone symbolizes more than just geography, my tiny philosophers. It embodies our struggle as mere mortals, navigating the soaring waves of life. He gestures again, nearly hitting a nearby child with a stray olive branch, causing a chorus of giggles to ripple through the audience. Their attention has shifted slightly from the coastline to an imaginary contest of dodgeball, starring very enthusiastic branches. Now tell me, he continues, shooting a challenging gaze around the group, what do you think these jagged cliffs, much like our actual friendships, might represent? One child, brimming with the audacity only an 8-year-old can muster, bellows, "They're pointy like a hedgehog." Immediately, laughter bursts forth like corks from amphorae, and even the teacher struggles not to join in. Such was their impromptu symposium, a blend of lofty thoughts and a dash of silliness that made conversations about deep existential concepts sound uncannily like the whimsical musings of a child during a fever dream. "Indeed," the teacher replies, steeling himself to regain composure. "Team Hedgehog holds wisdom you might not yet grasp. Much like the unpredictable nature of our existence, the rugged cliffs speak to the jaggedness of our experiences." You nod along enthusiastically, casting a knowing glance at another child who has just shimmied their way to a fig tree, clearly prioritizing fruit over philosophy. And this, dear listeners, was the juxtaposition of Greek life, navigating life's great discussions while battling the allure of snacks. The coastline is more than a mere display of granite. It symbolizes the clumsy dance of intellectualism that often ends in someone falling face first into a platter of olives, somewhat analogous to a holiday dinner where the only lessons learned are centered around how to withstand awkward family conversations. As you watch the gathering of budding philosophers grapple with profound questions while fervently munching on their snacks, you begin to realize that the sheer hilarity of these events defines not only ancient Greece, but also life itself. Because truly, in the midst of profound philosophical debates, nothing quite beats the experience of trying to dodge a runaway olive pit during a serious discourse about truth, right? So, as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, this charming chaos unfolds at the Symposium, an event where wisdom, absurdity, and the occasional flying fig collide spectacularly. And I must say, if ancient Greek youths were anything like today's crowd, occasionally indulging in intellectual pursuits while completely forgetting about the snacks, would likely lead to giggles and maybe a few spilled drinks. As the stones of that coastline remain timeless, it serves as a reminder that while the pursuit of knowledge is critical, so too is the ability to laugh at ourselves, banquet disaster or not. And now, as the night settles and the echoes of that long, uncomfortable past begin to fade, it's worth pausing for a quiet moment of reflection. Today's story carried us through hardship and absurdity alike, through cold floors, aching bodies, social pressure, and the strange routines that once passed for normal. Life in the past was not just difficult, but relentlessly demanding. Survival required endurance, patience, and a sense of humor sharp enough to laugh even when circumstances were anything but kind. People woke early, worked hard, endured hunger, illness, noise, filth, and exhaustion, and then did it all again the next day. And yet, they endured. They found ways to laugh, to gather, to argue, celebrate, complain, and dream. Even in moments that now seem ridiculous or uncomfortable, there was resilience quietly at work. These were people who adapted to the limits of their world, carrying on without insulation, antibiotics, electricity, or the certainty of tomorrow. Their strength wasn't loud, it was persistent. As you rest now, wrapped in warmth and quiet, let that contrast settle gently in your mind. The soft bed beneath you, the steady temperature of the room, clean water, silence when you want it, darkness that isn't threatening, only peaceful. These comforts, so ordinary today, would have seemed like miracles not long ago. There's no need to rush this thought. Let gratitude drift in slowly, without effort. You don't have to survive the past tonight. You don't have to endure stone floors or aching labor. You are safe. You are warm. You can rest. So allow your breathing to slow. Let the weight of the day fall away. And as sleep arrives, carry with you a quiet appreciation for how far humanity has come, and for the simple comfort of resting peacefully right here, right now. Good night.